We continue to reflect on the appalling violence we witness as a result of wars and conflict in our world. We gather those of us with faith and no faith, those of us with hope and no hope, those who have been heard and those who have been silenced, but we gather in the presence of a loving God who is at work in our world. Help us, O God, to affirm our common humanity, so that in our differences we may build together for justice and peace. And as we've prayed for peace for our world, we pray for peace for ourselves, our homes and families, our colleagues. Almighty God, you give us new life, new hope, and new opportunities with each returning day. Help us to use these blessings to the best of our capacity in doing the work we have to do, devoting ourselves to the service of others and putting our own interests aside to seek the welfare of neighbour. Guide each one of us as we seek the best way to live our lives. Amen.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies have been received from councillors Coe, Ennis, Hawkins and Warfield.
Thank you very much, Chair. Declaring an interest as County Councillor for Lichfield City North for item 15, motions on notice.
Same one as County Councillor.
The same, Chair. Oh, dear me.
Yeah, I think they're trying to work the microphone. It's difficult, but item 3, now it's echoing around the room, isn't it? Yeah, there's someone who knows what he's doing. Got technical assistance, that's good. And I'll carry on, okay. Well, item 3 then is to approve as a correct record the minutes of the previous meeting. Can I ask someone to move that? Councillor Evans.
Chair, I just want to check on the accuracy, because on page 11, it refers to Councillor, well, on page 10, it refers to Councillor P. Taylor, but on page 11, it just refers to P. Taylor. So the councillor is missed off. And the same on page 12, where it just refers to Bragger, which is a bit offensive to just have that there. So please, can we have that corrected?
Yeah, it gets less polite as it goes. It was a long day, I guess, but it gets less polite as it goes on. So we can have that corrected. So it's Councillor P. Taylor and Councillor R. Bragger. Okay. Are there any other comments? Councillor P. Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to check on page 11 the accuracy of the answer given by the Cabinet Member for High Streets and Visitor Economy. The words in the minutes are regarding the data, it will be supplied to you. As of yet, I've seen no supply of data or any indication that a supply of data is to be provided at a later date. So can I just confirm that that was her intention, please? Thank you.
Well, I think that's not really a question on the accuracy of the minutes, is it? I don't think. Yeah, I think you perhaps need to discuss that out with this item on the agenda, because it's just, if that's what Councillor Sylvester Hall says, she can perhaps discuss it with you afterwards. Are there any other points on the accuracy of the minutes? No? Okay, can we take these as approved then? Yeah.
Chair, I'll move them as amended.
Okay, thank you. All right, that's great. Then item 4 is the chair's announcements. Well, it's good to be here at the start of the meeting. It's worth noting that we meet at about almost exactly 50 years since the last meeting of the full Lichfield City Council and Lichfield Rural District Council, and very close to the inauguration of this council. And I hope that we'll mark in some way, critical or enthusiastic, the 50th anniversary of this council. It'll be an opportunity not just to review our crest, I think, but it's probably a good time to review the activities and role of the chair. In terms of what I've been doing, I'm quite busy, but not necessarily very busy as chair. I attended carol services in neighbouring authorities after I was elected to the chair, and I represented the district at the opening of the law term in Stafford last month. But perhaps it's a reflection, I hope it's no reflection on me, because most of you don't know much about me, but maybe a reflection on being a chair from a minority, being the chair from a minority party in a hung council, that I don't get asked to do a great deal. And I'd be very pleased to know what the task group, or, you know, the task group of the forensic and formidable overview and scrutiny committee comes up with about the role of the chair. And in the meantime, I'm open to offers from Paisley, Hill Ridware, Little Aston in particular. And if you have an event in your community or an activity where the presence of, you know, an elderly woman wearing a chain and doing her best, then I'd be very happy to come there. Finally, as you noticed, I'm very grateful to Councillor Cross's chaplain for continuing to serve for the rest of the year. And I do actually have a charity, though I'm still trying to work out how I'll raise any money for it. I do have a district-wide charity in my other role as mayor, but for the district, I'd like to respect again Councillor Cross's concern for dementia and for care for the elderly. Certainly dementia is something that's affected myself and my children. It's not easy actually to find a district-wide organisation that also is a charity, but I've managed to find MHA Communities South Staffordshire, which is based in Burntwood Old Mining College and runs memory cafes, lunch clubs, befriending activities across, well, not quite across the district, but in Burntwood, Lichfield and Rugeley, that I'm sure people from the district come to. And I'm going to work out how to raise some money for it in due course, and hope that the publicity at least will help them. And finally, we all agree that the meeting needs to be chaired so we can proceed to the rest of the business, which is the report of the leader, item 5, the report of the leader of the council. Call on Councillor Pullen.
Thank you, Chair. It gives me great pleasure to be able to present this report of Cabinet decisions and Cabinet member decisions. Just before I jump into the line items, Chair, just wanted to highlight a few of the items contained within the report, which I think all of us in this chamber can quite rightly be proud of. Firstly, a recommendation from Cabinet to full council tonight, which please let's not discuss it now, but later on at the item is a council tax increase of just 2.66%, something where we have not gone for the maximum rise, but you know, we stand sort of a fairly unique council, 2.66%. We also in this cabinet report talk about the Greenway. So we've, as we all know, we've got the lease for the Greenway. We've now also got the funding to assign to that to make that happen. That's required a lot of hard work from officers as well as members from across the chamber to make that happen. I think that's a really exciting initiative that we, again, all can quite rightly be proud of. It, Chair, talks about the provision of funding for the mandatory biodiversity net gain that's coming forward. I think we should be particularly proud within this chamber of Lichfield's historic approach to biodiversity net gain, something which is now being taken up nationally, but which we, of course, in Lichfield District have been doing for a very long time. And our own local policies already require double that of the national policy that's coming in. So again, something that right across this chamber, I think we really ought to be proud of. And finally, we know, and there are motions later on discussing this in terms of housing provision within the district. Again, the sort of the final phase is now moving to procurement for converting some of our own properties into housing, which will help those finding themselves in difficult situations and facing homelessness. So something which I think, again, all of us can be rightly proud of from across the chamber and right across the district. Those are just highlights, of course. So I'll now jump into the detail. 1, Money Matters 23-24 financial monitoring. Number 2, medium-term financial strategy.
Yes, just on number 2, I think Councillor Pullen has said we can defer discussion until an item later in the agenda, but just for absolute clarity, not raising them here doesn't mean to say we haven't got issues to raise at some point later on this evening.
Yeah, I think we will keep the medium-term financial strategy for item 11. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't trying to be that devious, Councillor Woodward. Thank you. I appreciate that. Item number, well, that is the end of that cabinet decisions, and then on to cabinet member decisions. Number 3 is the reallocation of Section 106 funds. Item number 4 is the Greenways project, the Basic Asset Protection Agreement. Number 5 is the introduction of digital electoral polling system. And I note there's a question on that later on as well. That concludes my report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there questions on the other items in the leaders' report? No? Okay, right. Item 6 then is the minutes of the overview and scrutiny committee. So I'll call on Councillor Norman to go through his minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I submit the minutes of the meetings held on the 19th of December 2023 and the 30th of January 2024, and hope I'll get a seconder.
Thank you. Who's going to second? Councillor Booker can second. You were sabotaged, I'm afraid. Yes. Councillor Booker can second the minutes. So Councillor Norman will now go through the minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Present, first item. 45, apologies for absence. 46, declaration of interests. 47, minutes of the previous meeting. Item 48, health matters. Item 49, task. Sorry.
Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, can I thank Councillor Leung for her clear and concise reports that she brings to this council, because it is important that we hear the health matters from the county council, although we don't have an awful lot of input into it. But it's important for the residents of the district that people are actually aware of what is happening. So thank you very much for what you're doing there. But once again, I'm raising the issue, people won't be surprised, about the Samuel Johnson Birth Centre, as I am concerned that no progress is being made and we're constantly being told it's temporary. Well, if a temporary closure, how long is it temporary? And what an absolute waste of a building that is there, and the modern facilities that are there as well. We are told that there is lack of demand, but that is not surprising now it's been closed for a length of time. We know there's a shortage of midwives, and we know the NHS is in dire need of massive changes, but we must continue here to ensure that adequate services are provided for pregnant women as close as possible to where they live. And once this is lost, we may never ever get it back. It will probably be extremely difficult to do that. So it's not only the actual birthing facilities that are provided, but it's antenatal, postnatal appointments and other appointments that link in with that. And they can all be utilised from this centre. So we do need to continue to fight for the retention of it, as I've requested for many months now, and will continue to do so until we get an answer. I do hope that Councillor Young will be able to give us some positive feedback soon. So I hope that you can keep us updated. And in requesting updates, I do understand that this is a centre for safer births, straightforward births, and it's run purely by midwives, but it is an important, I think, asset to this district.
Thank you. Do you want to respond to that, Councillor Norman?
Yes, please, thank you. Before COVID, the units actually were designed for 250. Thanks awfully. Before COVID, the units were designed for 250 births there, and before COVID, it's only 220, and that was the choice of mothers going there. It wasn't forced upon anybody. The reason why it's on the agenda is because it was actually discussed at a recent health and care scrutiny committee, in which Councillor Young, Vice Chair, actually reported on. And in fact, it's down also for a future meeting of the Health and Care Review and Scrutiny Committee at the county. And in addition, they're looking at the feasibility of an audit of maternity services in the county. So hopefully that does come to fruition, and we will get a further report very soon on this service that's so vital for those who know more about giving birth than I do.
Thank you. If you want to continue.
Minute 49, task group notes. Minute 50, planning committee protocol. And, minute 51 was the work programme. Is that the work programme?
Councillor Robson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to thank Councillor Norman. I think I'd raised at 3 or 4 meetings the Overview Scrutiny Committee running that we needed to get the Civic Matrix task group up and running, at which point he then made me the chair of that committee, and I am proud to announce that committee will be meeting on Tuesday, so hopefully we should have a report to come through Council ahead of the new municipal year, which is a harder set of words to say than you realise, ahead of annual council in May.
Thank you, Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Chair. This question and comment is really in relation to the subject we've just heard of, and of course that you referred to within your own opening remarks. Could the Chair of ONS Committee please explain his reasoning for purposefully excluding ex-chairs and other office holders from the Matrix Task Group? In an email reply to my offer of joining the task group as being the chair most affected by the introduction of the matrix, which occurred during my own period of office, he stated that he had mistakenly invited me to join, that he had excluded all current or ex-chairs and vice-chairs, and that I could maybe submit my unsolicited views to Councillor Robertson. Surely the role of any task group includes and necessarily involves gathering information from outside experts, or at least from persons with experience. On the 14th of September last year, the ONS Committee resolved that a one-off task and finish group be formed. That group is to hold its meeting, as we've just heard, next Tuesday. And as far as I'm aware, over the past 5 months, no past chair or vice chair have been asked for comment or input towards that meeting. Given the subject matter, outside consultation should and could perhaps also include those more recent and thereby affected chairs who are now themselves ex-councillors. This investigation is not about chairmanship skills or about politics. It is about the civic function and, most importantly, the public face of this council. How, therefore, can a group of people who have had no experience in this district council's civic role presume to make an educated and rational decision? This could appear to be heading towards a classic example of groupthink, as defined and debated at the Equality and Diversity Training session last week. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Norman. No, Councillor Norman responds to that.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, you have to be very careful about saying you've got no experience in something, because that would mean that you can never scrutinise anything of which you have no experience. But of course, the skill of scrutiny is actually asking the right questions, doing the research, and might I suggest, inviting witnesses. Now, why he's not been invited, or any other former chair has not been invited, is matter for the task group. If you do delegate that to task group members. There's nothing to stop an unsolicited piece of paper going to the task group, so to get those views across, and I would certainly urge ex-chairs to do that. The reason why I had to sort of ban Councillor Salter specifically is because he slipped through the net. I wasn't here, I was on my 4-year sabbatical as he was chair, and I'd missed it, but I blame him because he's a magician, and he may have been here, he may not have been here, I don't know, but hopefully he'll make his views known, and he's made his views known tonight, and I hope those have been heard. Okay, thank you. Bear with. Minute number 52, exclusion of the press and public, and then the confidential minutes of the previous meeting at item 53. That's on that first scrutiny meeting. For the 30th of January, again present, 54 apologies for absence, 55 declaration of interests, 56 minutes of the previous meeting, 57 health matters, 58 notes from task groups.
Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Chair. I've been in email correspondence over the last week or so with Councillor Norman about this. It refers to the last sentence in the notes from the task group. And I'd like to suggest an amendment. I was frustrated and concerned that I couldn't share with the task group members information that I'd had the previous evening from the joint cabinet meeting and shadow cabinet meeting. And some of the task group members are very angry that they couldn't hear from me on that. So I made it very clear at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee in future that I intended to share information on a confidential basis. If it was given to me in confidentiality, on the basis they would keep it to themselves and keep it confidential. And I think if people can trust me with information, I should be able to trust members of my task group with that information. So I'd like to suggest the following amendment. Instead of the last sentence, simply say, he raised his concerns at being unable to share confidential information from a cabinet meeting with task group members, and made it clear that he intended to share the information in future on a strictly confidential basis. I think that makes it very clear how we intend to go forward with the task group. Thank you.
Councillor Norman.
Thank you, Chair. Well, obviously I wasn't there, so I would certainly accept the chair of the scrutiny task group's proposed amendment. It seems okay to me, and it makes his views clear. I know it can be frustrating. I hate to have a frustrated council. It's frustration enough having a government that doesn't want to give you any money, but being frustrated about not reporting the minutes as you would wish, it's a very difficult job doing the minutes, I have to say. So I'll accept that, and hopefully other members will accept that and the time, so that can be recorded. Not that you're asked to agree the minutes, of course, you know, I'm in a unique position here. 59, empty homes update. Minute 59. Minute 60.
I think Councillor Robertson on 59, is it, or 60?
No, he's ready
60.
for 60, you see.
Okay,
I'm ready. Tell me what it is, yeah? The governance of planning obligations, strategic infrastructure group, and allocation of community infrastructure levy.
Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Norman. Just one matter of accuracy, if I may, on minute 60. I think it's particularly important that we do raise this now, and I will try and cover as much detail as possible, because I'm aware that the output of this is going to Cabinet on Tuesday, so there may not be time to get updated minutes circulated with enough time for Cabinet members to fully consider. As part of the discussions on this item, one of the things that I did press very hard on was some of the issues that we ran into last year. So I think it was 2022 actually. The call for bids into SIL went out, and there were some very valuable bids which didn't get funded because there's never enough money. And I think we all understand that. But I think one of those very valuable bids that didn't get funded was funding for additional GP capacity across the city and obviously therefore the wider district. Now, I don't think there is a single councillor in this room who won't have had somebody raise this with them. And the difficulties of accessing GP appointments is something which is a national issue, but also a local issue. I'm sure people have seen the discussions that happen online around that. There was a bid in there for £70,000 to create some additional capacity for that from the ICB. Now, the committee did press this very hard and did pass that information to Cabinet. In the end, it wasn't funded because one of the bids that was successful was so large that it left very little space within that budget. Now, that was an internal bid made up of a significant number of individual projects that had been bundled together. And one of the points that I made was that we need to look very carefully at whether that type of bundling is appropriate. Because what we don't want to do is, when we're looking at this, fail to fix a problem. And personally, from my view, and I am sure for many people in the chamber, and I'm sure for many people in the district, that it was a bad decision last year to not fund additional GP capacity. There were reasons for that, and that's not the point I'm making here. The point I'm making is that there is a procedural thing that we need to make sure we get right in making sure that there is some form of block on these composite bids being put together, which form almost the entirety of the funding available, which then preclude the opportunity to look into others.
Sorry,
This is the report about the accuracy of the minutes.
I think he's about to make that point, isn't he? That there needs to be something in the minutes. Well, I think it's,
So that was discussed at the meeting and it wasn't minuted. Hence, I'm raising this as a matter of
Yeah.
accuracy, which was my
Yeah.
thesis statement when I rose to my feet. So I think here, these minutes
Yeah.
would be much improved by the addition of a paragraph to that effect.
right.
And
Okay, right.
and simultaneously, I think cabinet
Well-
members who will be discussing this on Tuesday would be well versed to hear that in the absence of that paragraph not appearing in this draft of
I
these
think
minutes.
you,
Thank you.
yeah, okay, so that councillor Pullen, I think, had a point on it.
Just a point of information, Chair, the
Um,
whilst I would not wish to take away from the point that Councillor Robertson is making, the bid that he talks about was not about GP capacity. It was about creating consulting rooms. GP capacity, I think, actually were phrases that were used elsewhere.
Yeah.
You don't create GP capacity merely by redecorating some rooms. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you all then. Yes. Councillor Norman.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really not about the accuracy of the minutes in my report. It's just give people a chance to have a say on anything really, to me, not through me to others. That would be an abuse, I think, on issues that are raised, and perhaps if they're not members of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, not able to speak on that. So it basically anything goes almost, I would suggest. I will point out that the Integrated Care Board themselves have an opportunity to ask for more money, and I noticed the Westgate practice did have £120,000 in 2019. But I mean, all these bids will be balanced and people have to make a judgment on it and so on. But I do think the recommendation from the Scrutiny Committee, we're grateful that we're able to get involved in that. We did ask for that and it came back to the committee and we've discussed it at great length. It will be an improved version, I think, involving the parish councils as well. So it'll be an improved system, I think. And again, we can review that in a year's time to see how it's gone. But, you know, I'm not going to argue against Councillor Robertson's request. He did make that case quite forcefully at the committee, and I can't detract from that. So hopefully the leaders heard that one, particularly about this particular aspect of health in the Lichfield City, and hopefully the new system will make it easier to make those cases for those individual applications. Is my view. Item 61, medium-term financial strategy. Not interested. We've got any questions?
I think we can perhaps
And
take those
with
at
the work programme at minute 662, Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you
you.
very much. Thank you. Phew, right, so we move to item 7, the minutes of the Audit Committee. And can I call on Councillor Ho?
Thank you, Chair. I move that the proceedings of the Audit Committee meeting held on the 1st of February 2024 be received and, when necessary, approved and adopted.
And do we have a seconder for that?
Yes,
Thank you, Councillor Whitehouse. Right, now I go through these minutes. So 36 apologies, 37 declarations of interest, 38 the minutes. Councillor Trent.
Thank you, Chair. Just a typo on 37. It says absence rather than interest.
Oh, right, you're right, yes. No declarations of, yeah, it's just a typo. Shows how we all read these without noticing. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Number 38 minutes. 39, the audit plan, including the planned audit fee, and there's more on audit later in the meeting. Item 40, the Treasury Management Statement and Prudential Indicators. Item 41, the Internal Audit Progress Report. And item 32, the Risk Management Update. And item 43, GDPR Data Protection Policy. Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully a very quick one on this. We did talk about suppliers that use non-UK data centres. Mr. Edwards said he'd get back to us. I'm just wondering if you've had any communication from Mr. Edwards in relation to that.
No, I have not, and I'll chase that for you, Councillor.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to be back on the audit committee. I think there's some fascinating information that comes through audit, and would recommend all members glance through the audit reports. They may sound on the surface to be very dry, but there's lots of interesting information contained within there. I thought it was an interesting discussion on GDPR as it relates to employees and also as it relates to members. Now, I'm conscious of the fact that new members were all asked to do an e-learning course on GDPR. It took me 2 or 3 times, I have to admit, to get my certification, but I'm not sure that all members have followed that through. We've got a new member, so 6 months after the event session next week, and possibly that can be picked up there, but I don't know whether Councillor Ho or other officers have followed up on members actually doing that GDPR training. Thanks, Chair.
Well, I must confess I know some new members that hasn't done it, so I might. So perhaps you should.
Thanks, Councillor. No, we haven't, but I'll look into that for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, and then finally it was the work programme, item 44. Okay, thank you. I think we can take those minutes as received and adopted then. Thank you. Item 8 then is the minutes of the Planning Committee. Can I call on Councillor Marshall?
Thank you, Chair. I move that the proceedings of the Planning Committee meetings held on the 15th and the 24th of January 2024 be received and, where necessary, approved and adopted.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Okay.
I'm happy to second both of those, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chetland. And because there's often longer items, although I don't think it's true, in fact, we're going to do this page. So page 33. Page 30. Sorry, Councillor Norman.
Thank you, Chair. I've got the page numbers down, so I want to talk about minute 33, whatever page that is.
Yeah, it's page 33 is on minute 30.
That's the other minute,
the other way around, yeah.
It's just that planning committee members have a role to play as planning committee members. I have a role as chair of scrutiny, so I'm not nasty to either side. You know, I try to be even balanced as chair of scrutiny and have a different role as an individual member. But when you're a member of the planning committee, I think you should be acting as a member of the planning committee. So I was a bit surprised to hear the application regarding the new leisure centre at Stitchbrook Park, which of course is our own application, introduced by the chair, saying to the planning officer, it will give you great pleasure to make this presentation. And the first speaker to speak on it started off, yeah, it's looking good. I just do not think that's the way you should do a planning committee. I may be wrong.
Do you have a comment on that, Councillor Marshall?
Chair, yes, I can respond. I'm not sure how I'm going to respond to that because I don't feel as though in any way that was an inappropriate statement to make. It is, without any equivocation, a very important application. it's been very eagerly awaited by so many people in the district as well. And I know that how much canvassing there was and how much support for a new leisure centre we received some years ago when we realised that the Friary Grange Leisure Centre was in a very parlous state. So I think this is something which has been very eagerly awaited by not just members of this council, or at least some members of this council. I can't speak for everyone, of course, but I'm pretty certain that a lot of people in Lichfield district are delighted that we're going to be having a new leisure centre, which will create an opportunity for young and old to indulge in lots and lots of sporting activity. And so it did give me great pleasure to know that that was being debated and would be decided at planning committee. And I'm not quite sure that I would feel that anything that I said or my demeanour in any way was inappropriate. But I will leave that for others to decide.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Point.
Please, if I may, Chair. I think I'm right to believe that the planning committee and the planning committee members operate a quasi-judicial role, and their role isn't to welcome or to deprecate any application, but to scrutinise that application in detail. And having watched that committee meeting on YouTube, I too was surprised that there seemed to be very little actual scrutiny of some of the detail of the planning application, but it was, yeah, this is our project, this is what we're going to see through, and it was sort of pushed through in that way. So I'd like some clarification as to what the role of the chair of planning is and what the role of the members are. Thank you.
I'm not sure if we've had, well, it seems to me there's a difference of interpretation as to what whether welcoming the application was approving it. I think we would all agree, I suppose, that all applications, and perhaps particularly those from the council, should be scrutinised. Council itself should be scrutinised very carefully. But I'm not clear that we can resolve this in discussing the minutes of this meeting. But if Councillor Marshall wants to say anything.
Thank you, Chair. If I may just come back. I had the great pleasure of attending the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, where, of course, the operation of the planning committee was investigated and interrogated. And one of the comments that came out of that, and I was very aware of and I took heed of, was the fact that we had tried to make sure that the planning committee meetings were a little bit, not necessarily shorter, but a little bit tighter in the way that they were run. And I think one of the criticisms had been that the officers had tightened up on their reports. They were shorter than they used to be. And generally speaking, we felt that the meetings were running a little bit better than perhaps they used to. But I know that there wasn't a criticism, but the comment was made that sometimes the debates went on for too long, and sometimes points could be reiterated unnecessarily. So on the one hand, planning committee could be criticised for running on a little bit later or longer than they should, and the meetings were slightly more protracted than they needed to be. But then by truncating the meetings in a way and attempting to carry out the wishes of the overview and scrutiny meetings comments, I think that by bringing the meetings to making them shorter, I think was in compliance with what the overview and scrutiny was trying to achieve. But now that we've done that, the accusation could be made that there was insufficient debate. So, I mean, I'd be very interested to know from, if you like, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, by all means, if you want to contact me via email, tell me what you consider to be the appropriate length of time that a planning meeting should go on for. As I say, criticism could be levelled that the meetings went on for too long, and I accept that. And now we're being told perhaps some of the planning committee meetings should be a little bit longer, and there should be more interrogation of the facts and more debate. So that is, as I see it, I'd like clarification on that point. But thank you.
I think then we can perhaps pursue these issues on another occasion. But there's the minutes now of the 24th of January, page 35 on the Councillor Norman.
Thank you, Chair. There's a clear misunderstanding of what I'm trying to say here about the way that a planning committee is conducted and not how fast it is done. Because I will certainly be very happy to give the timing for the other items that we discussed that that previous planning committee meeting compared to when it came to the leisure centre. But regarding the item there on the former Debenham site and the new cinema, again, our own application, the same speaker who said, yeah, it's looking good, this time said, well, it's been a long time coming, hasn't it? But it's here now and it needs passing, so I'll move acceptance. I'm just not clear where the planning scrutiny comes into it. We didn't interrogate the planning committee at the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. All we were asked to do was to look at a few protocols, which we did. And some of the time people speak on that was on there, at least for those outside speakers. But if you're not going to even ask any questions, just don't, well, you have to bring it to the planning committee, but just move it, second it, and get it straight there. I'd like to think that there might be some planning issues that you at least ask questions about and not just pass it through like that, because it must look very odd to people out there who do object to some of these applications, that all you've done is just say, yeah, it's great, we're doing it, it's our own, we'll give ourselves permission and let's move on. I don't think that's quite right.
I think that's the same. I think we've got the point that we should all us, well, I'm not any longer a member of the planning committee, but that we all need to do our best to interrogate the applications. Note that meeting closed at a time not specified, and it's going to now go on for long. Councillor Chetland, and then perhaps.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a little unfair to say that the planning committee members don't scrutinise the papers. It's probably more reading to do with planning committee than there is to do with quite a lot of the other committees, and they sit more often. What was noticeable within the last those two planning applications mentioned is the number of conditions that have been put on by our own planning committee to ensure that the build is scrutinised properly. And those that had read the reports had already seen that a lot of those conditions have been put on, and the discussion that took place led to a vote. Everybody had the opportunity to raise any issues in relation to that, and there were possibly more conditions on which was the first one, the sports centre, than there have been on any come before us, because the scrutiny within the planning department was so good that it reassured us within the committee.
Thank you. I think we can perhaps take those minutes as received and adopted, and we've had a useful discussion for how the planning committee should operate. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 9, the minutes of the Regulatory and Licensing Committee, and I'll call on Councillor Yates.
Thank you, Chair. I move that the proceedings of the Regulation and Licensing Committee meeting, which was held on the 13th of December 2023, be received and where necessary, approved and adopted.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Chetland. Thank you. Thank you. And I'll go through them. Item page 37, item 15, apologies. Item 16, declarations of interest. Oh, sorry, Councillor Ashton.
I believe I was present at that meeting, so I don't see my name there.
Sorry, Councillor Ashton, I didn't catch that.
I believe I was present at that meeting and I don't see my name there.
Oh, right. If everyone else believes that, we should add Councillor Ashton's name to those minutes. I think, thank you. Right, apologies for absence, declarations of interest, minutes of the previous meeting. Item 18, proposed extinguishment of a public footpath. Over the page, 19, revised taxi licensing policy. Councillor Ray.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to talk about this. I've discussed the taxi policy of this council before in this chamber. I welcome this consultation. The objective of encouraging more electric vehicles amongst our taxis in this district, one measure to improve the environment of our district. And I've spoken to Councillor Wilcox. I know this is something he's very committed with. I'd like the council to go further and to be bold, like in London.
all electric vehicle, all taxis have to be non-diesel, non-petrol-based, diesel-based engines by 2033, I think is the date. I'd like to be this council to be bold and have a policy like that, so we bring that date forward. And then the other thing is to stress as part of that consultation, what the taxi drivers say is that they want the life of the vehicle to be extended from 7 years, which is a standard 7 years, regardless of whether it's a petrol, diesel, EV, hybrid engine, to a longer period. In London, it's 12 years, and I understand the direction of travel in London is to push that even further for 15 years. That means those drivers who invest in modern, clean vehicles then can recoup their investment over a longer period of time. A good taxi service is good for our community, and if we have more electric and hybrid vehicles, that's good for our environment. So I welcome this consultation, and I really hope that those considerations, which I'll refer to in the minutes, are taken forward and seriously considered. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know. Do you want to respond to that? I guess it's.
Those kind words, and we will. With our meetings, we are looking forward to do some of those things you've mentioned. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you,
And
Chair.
item 20, thank you. Is item 20, the setting of regulation and enforcement fees, charges and fixed penalty amounts. Okay, thank you. Then over the page is the work programme. And then I think that's it. So can we take those minutes as received? And aye, thank you. Item 10 is the auditor's annual report for 2021 to 2, 2022 to 3. And I think it's Councillor Ho who's going to speak on this item.
Thank you, Chair. I move that the auditor's annual report 2021-22 and 2022-23 be received and noted. And Chair, it would be remiss of me if I didn't take this opportunity to thank and pay tribute to our officers, namely Anthony Thomas and Andrew Wood and their teams, for the hard work they've been doing over the last couple of years. It's been challenging for the public sector auditing. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that I'm advised that a seconder is not needed. No, because we're just receiving and noting it. Those of you who I've read, does anyone want to ask any questions or make any comments on Councillor Norman and then Councillor Woodward?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just on page 56, which is the improvement recommendation.
Yeah.
And the one I'm looking at is the council should review the arrangements for the appointment of directors to its wholly owned company to minimise the potential for conflicts of interest. And I just wanted to know from Councillor if what action is being taken on that, please.
Councillor Ho.
As far as I know, Councillor Norman, no action has been taken yet.
Councillor Woodward.
Thanks, Chair. As it happens, I want to refer to exactly that minute, and it shows that Councillor Norman and I don't always compare notes before full council meetings, contrary to what people expect. It is the improvement recommendations I want to refer to, and they're contained on the executive summary on page 46, but specifically there on page 56, it refers to a review of the governance arrangements of the LATCO. Now, I'm sure members will recall that when a new director was appointed to the LATCO, Lichfield West Midlands Trading Services, the decision was called in, and Overview and Scrutiny Committee made a number of recommendations and suggestions to the Leader of Council about taking forward that decision, whether it was appointing at least 2 councillors as directors, or from one person's point of view, appointing no councillors as directors because of the potential conflict of interest. As this is now actively under review, perhaps Councillor Ho will push the leader on ensuring that he revisits those recommendations that were made at Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which I think were made with the best of intentions and in good faith. Can I also refer to the improvement recommendation on page 60, and this is the development of a performance framework, and then on page 61, the need to look at contract and relationship management. We're told that a suite of performance indicators are going to be available by the end of this financial year, 2023-24, which is approaching very, very quickly. I'd like to know, will this be reported back to Overview and Scrutiny Committee, to the council, or to the Audit Committee? Because I think in the past we've seen failings of contract management and performance review. If I mention the contract with Freedom Leisure, for example, that was one significant fail in terms of performance management. So where are those recommendations then going to be taken forward to? Perhaps Councillor Ho could elucidate, or someone else. Overview and Scrutiny, full council, Audit Committee. Thank you.
I think don't know if you, Councillor Ho, can you help us on those? Whether to go back to audit, overview.
Thank you, Chair. Well, as it's in
and
an
if the
audit report,
timescale is up to date, I suppose.
Thanks, Chair. Well, as it's in an audit report, it should be coming back to the audit committee. Thank you, Councillor Woodward.
In order for Councillor Pullen to make a comment. Sorry. Yeah, go on. Councillor Pullen has a comment to make.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of them actually. I think in terms of what action is already underway, further down in the audit report, it does specifically state that members and senior officers are very much aware of the potential risk of conflict. It does point out that it will be kept under review, as well as the steps already taken to minimise the risk of conflict. And it also says that the review of the LATCO governance arrangements and structures has been included on the internal audit plan. I think it would be unfair to suggest that the governance wasn't already robust. Can it be improved? Yes, I think that's been well understood by all parties from the very beginning. And this is just pointing out, as it says in the internal, or as it says in the audit report, we're already aware of that. We've already got a plan to review it at a specific date in time. Yeah, that'll do. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ho. I think we can move on then to item 11, the medium-term financial strategy and the council tax resolution. And I'll call on Councillor Strachan to speak on this.
Good evening, Chair, and good evening, members. I am delighted to propose the medium-term financial strategy for the forthcoming financial years. Before I start with my substantive observations, I would like to place on record my thanks to Anthony Thomas and to the Finance and the Revenues and Benefits team for their efforts in producing the documents and supporting evidence. And so to everybody who has had a hand in getting us to this point, I do offer my most sincere and heartfelt thanks. Chair, this year there are 17 recommendations standing in my name, and I shall turn to them very shortly. However, before that, it's become something of a tradition at the opening of an MTFS speech for me to take a short wander through the recent checkered history of local government finance settlements. This is the 5th speech that I've given, either in this chamber or virtually via Teams on one memorable occasion, and on none of those occasions have I had visibility of more than the next 13 months that lie ahead. This is also the 11th consecutive year that this council has received a single year settlement, despite repeated pleas for greater certainty across the entire sector. And Chair, I repeat those calls today to our friends and our colleagues in Westminster. Give us the certainty that we need that enables us to deliver the services that you expect. I thought, Chair, that there was some glimmer of hope. The last time that I stood here, we had perhaps more visibility than usual, because the government gave us a broad, and I say broad, it was the broadest possible outline of what we might expect this year. And we set our sails accordingly. This year, we've had no such luck. Indeed, with the prospect of a general election at some point in the next calendar year, we could argue that we currently have even less understanding of the world of local government finance than at any point in the last 5 years, and possibly even longer than that. Certainly, Chair, in the event of a change of government, local government finance is almost a complete unknown. Regardless of who wins the next election, it is true that this sector cannot keep going on as it has been, and that reform is a virtual certainty. For that reason, here at Lichfield District Council, we assess all years beyond the next year as high risk for major change, and we are taking absolutely nothing for granted beyond that point. Indeed, on a side note, the local government settlement was announced shortly before Christmas in 2023. By the 24th of January 2024, we'd already received an amended settlement, admittedly giving a small amount of additional funding, which is very welcome, but it also means that the certainty afforded by the latest financial settlement lasted for a little over a month, which is perhaps not the best environment to be planning one's finances in. To our own situation here in Lichfield, despite the horrific lack of certainty around our future funding, The consistent and some may say heroic efforts of our council officers mean that we remain in a resilient position and we are ready to play our part in serving this district with an ambitious and an exciting programme of our own. In review, in the last year, we have secured the joint venture to deliver on the new cinema operated by Everyman, bringing the former Debenham store back into use with a long-awaited project. And we've also agreed the deal to bring the asset entirely under council control to manage as we wish. We have secured planning permission not only for that, but also for the new leisure centre to replace the ageing centre at Friary Grange, which will deliver an updated and improved facility, a swimming pool promoted by an Olympic champion, and a building that is energy efficient and fit for the 21st century. We've seen the benefits from taking administration of our disabled facilities grants back in-house, with the trade company having eliminated the backlog of referrals within its first 12 months, and we will make progress on the adaptations as long as there are tradesmen to take the work. We've been running a public campaign aimed at increasing rates of recycling, which is reaping results. It's developed resident views, and it's also been commissioned, I'm told, by 14 other councils to date, taking a national lead on recycling policy, whilst also preparing for the all-important next steps of food waste recycling and the renewal of our waste fleet. We've started the process to unlock the development of the Birmingham Road site, which has had a considerable amount of public funds tied up in it for several years. As the first phase of this comes to fruition, the eyesore site on entry to the city will be brought into use, but it will also deliver valuable funds to support other areas of the district which have perhaps not received the attention that they may have expected over the last few years. We've brought forward industry-leading employment terms and benefits to improve staff morale and retention, alongside an ambitious and successful apprenticeship scheme. We've seen our first year administering the new council tax support scheme, which has relieved 100% of council tax for the most vulnerable people in our district, and which recommendation 2.15 seeks to continue through the next year and beyond. We have made £1.7 million of savings through a combination of efficiencies or investing to save, doing a number of things more efficiently or bringing better returns while not affecting the frontline services that we provide. And we have carried on collecting 70,000 bins a week, considering planning applications, keeping food businesses clean and safe, and maintaining events and recreation in our, hopefully, award-winning parks, alongside all of the other work we would consider to be business as usual. And Chair, we have done all of this for £3.60 a week. I think that Shire districts and Lichfield District Council in particular lie at the heart of delivering excellent quality of life for our residents. That our role in delivering services at a local level can take a far more forensic approach to any problems than larger councils in the top tier, simply because we're closer to our residents. But if we don't play that role effectively, and if we're not supported in playing that role effectively, that quality of life will erode very quickly, and we must preserve against that. Chair, I believe that the medium-term financial strategy before us tonight will continue the excellent work that we've begun these past few years and will serve this district and its residents well. It commits funding where funding is necessary to continue our headline capital projects, and it maintains the traditional care and prudence that has ensured that this council is in a position of relative health in a difficult environment. Chair, it's to that care and prudence that I have to turn next. Members, at paragraph 3.47 to 3.54, you will see Mr. Thomas's assessment of our financial risks faced. And you will see that the CIPFA, that's the Chartered Institute of Public Finance Accountants, but I try not to say that too often because I've got the wrong teeth in. The CIPFA Resilience Index considers us to be a lower risk authority when compared to other districts and indeed our near neighbours. However, that risk assessment also has to take account of wider economic factors. Considering all of those factors in the round, it is proposed by our expert advisors to increase our minimum level of reserves, that is, the amount that we have to keep in the bank to avoid calamity, to £2 million from the previous rate of £1.9 million. It is currently forecast that this will be a temporary position, and that as the cost of living crisis eases, we will be able to release more of that. And I think, Chair, that most members here know my position on the unacceptability of simply locking public finances away, rather than making it work for the people who have paid it in the first place. So I sincerely hope that any increase there will be for the shortest possible period of time. Chair, my officers and I must also make an assessment of external pressures on the council itself and take such steps as are necessary to ensure resilience. It will not have been lost on members that the rate of inflation throughout the year has been very high. And this has had particularly acute impacts, particularly in fuel and energy costs. And there were too many particulars there, so no one buzz me, please. Inflationary pressures alone, Chair, hit this council for nearly £500,000 last year. Costs which are unlikely to fall and have to be met somehow. The position taken centrally is unhelpful. They tell us that we have to do this via council taxation. And in fact, Chair, they actually assess our core spending power against a maximum council tax increase, assuming that we will take that course and that every single council in the land will increase their council tax by the maximum. I've said before, both in scrutiny and in budget meetings, that simply going for a maximum increase year on year on year is both lazy and insulting to our residents. I'm pleased to see that some councils intend not to join us in seeking a maximum increase because nothing has budged me from that view. Chair, I therefore will seek your approval this evening for an increase at £5 per year in a Band C property, which would bring our share of council tax to £192.85 per year at that band. This still does not discharge, by any stretch, entirety of the burden we've received through inflation, but we do, as a resilient council, have some ability to absorb those pressures, and we do so because of our historic prudence here. I remind members at this stage that our share of the wider council tax bill is a little over 9%. And the greatest proportion of that is collected for the county council and with their twin pressures of highways and social care. I have no control over their situation. Nevertheless, what I do have control over, I will make sure is weighted appropriately. To minimise the impact that this will have on the more vulnerable in society, we are uprating the council tax support scheme by 6.7% in line with universal credit, and we are also maintaining the emergency reserves that we created last year to support people through the cost of living crisis. It is necessary so to do. Chairman, while we are an ambitious council delivering exciting projects, we must also be a compassionate one. I would urge any resident who is struggling to contact me and to contact our revenues team, and we had a public call for this just a couple of weeks ago. A number already have. We will do our best to support you. Chair, this is the first time that I've presented a medium-term financial strategy in a council under no overall control. Scrutiny members may recall that when I first presented the medium-term financial strategy to you in the September of last year, I said that I did not want to create a budget that opposition councillors could abstain from. I want to create, and indeed I hope that I have created, a budget that you can support. Members of both major opposition parties sent in proposals, and we have included as many as we could. Labour members, you may see the specific revenue reserves that you asked for to bring forward regeneration ideas in Burntwood and heritage ideas in the city. And I sincerely hope, Councillor Booker, that we will soon find ways to extend that to the rural communities as well. Your email of last week is not lost on me. Councillor Robertson specifically lobbied very strongly and passionately to protect the community and voluntary sectors from financial erosion due to inflation. I confirm that not only have we done that, we will also commit £50,000 of additional funding from our January windfall, with the remaining £50,000 being directed to fund the next round of apprenticeships to develop the next generation of talented local government officers. Chair, these changes to the originally proposed budget are the result of political parties working together for the benefit of local communities. This is what we can do when we set aside our differences and listen to each other. Chair and members, I would submit that what is before you tonight is a budget that once again balances prudence with ambition, that balances responsibility with compassion, and that delivers on the promises that we have made. It brings empty shops and derelict sites back into use. It safeguards council services without cutting and without creating excessive tax burdens, and it unlocks public funds for the next round of exciting projects. Lichfield District Council is delivering for the people of this district, and this MTFS is instrumental to making that happen. Chair, I move the recommendations.
Thank you very much. Is it seconded? Yeah.
Yes, Chair, thank you. I'll second that. So Councillor Strachan will elucidate the proposals within that budget and the challenges of that budget are far better than I. But I think just at this point, I should put on thanks on record my thanks to officers, as Councillor Strachan's already done so, but equally council colleagues for the input that they've put into the creation of this budget, which, as Councillor Strachan says, is the first time that we've done a budget with an overall control council. This is new territory for all of us, but I've want to been heartened by the work that's taken place cross-party to ensure that we've got a budget at least which we can agree on to take to our residents so that we can carry on with the work that we're doing year round. When we met post-elections last year, I think there was one thing which we desperately wanted to get through, and that was a budget. I think we said we can argue about everything else all year round as long as we can please get a budget through to make sure that our residents don't suffer. Hopefully the work that Councillor Strachan has done with Mr Thomas and colleagues has done that. Chair, I reserve my right to reply and look forward to the ensuing debate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So comments, arguments, whatever. Councillor Robertson. Councillor Woodward.
Thank you, Chair. As I rise to speak, can I echo both Councillor Strachan and Councillor Pullen's kind and very appropriate words in praise of our Section 151 officer and the excellent team behind him, which have produced not only this very detailed report, but also I think a significant number of others in the making of this MTFS. And that's not to be flippant. I think it's really important that we do have the proper levels of scrutiny over this. This is public money that we're spending, and we need to make sure that it does go in the right direction. And it's very heartening to see. Hopefully, all sides. He looks at the back of the room, supporting the kind words from Councillor Strachan on that one. It is weird standing up here. It's like the fifth time I've done one of these speeches in relation to the medium-term financial strategy. It's the first time where it's not been quite as much of a ding-dong as it usually would be. And I think the no overall control situation in the council obviously changes the political backdrop, as does that looming general election, which will appear at some point in the next 11 or so months. I am really glad to see actually that we are able to properly work together and to properly really try to pull this apart and to put in projects and procedures and look at how we can bring in the entire council as part of this and work towards hopefully that brighter and better future for everybody in the district. It is a little unfortunate that that's only come this year after an overall collection result and not in previous years with discussions such as the £1 million for Burntwood, which I know was rather hotly contested a few years ago. I think the MTFS here is imperfect. If it was me, I probably wouldn't have written exactly this, but that's not to say that there isn't much to commend in here. I will again agree with Councillor Strachan. Don't worry, I'll disagree with you in a minute, Rob. Don't worry. I'll agree again with Councillor Strachan that the council tax support scheme which we offer at this district council is very good, and it's so important that we continue to maintain that we do uprate that in line with universal credit, because at the end of the day, that is the very most vulnerable residents in our district that we're supporting through that, and I am heartened to see it in there. However, I am not surprisingly, perhaps, most pleased to see proposals from this side of the chamber included in this MTFS. For the first time, we've identified proper funding for a plan for regeneration in Burntwood to develop a proper plan. We've been without action on the regeneration of Burntwood Town Centre for many decades now, and we don't have a plan. There hasn't been a plan for any of those decades, and it is really heartening to see that we are now in a position where we are moving towards where there will be a plan, where there is a plan also to identify capital receipts to be able to invest into that. It is an excellent step in correcting one of the wrongs that's been apparent across the district for a long time in the lack of regeneration in Burntwood Town Centre. I'm very pleased to see that in there. I am also very excited to see an investment in a project to use the great industrial and social history of our area to drive the economy of the future. One of my favourite sentences that I used to use a lot when I was teaching is, if you don't know where you've come from, you've got no idea where you're going. And I think looking back to our really proud history and proud civic traditions across this district can be something that we can all be very proud of, and we can really use that to help drive our future economy. It's very good to see that those proposals have been heard. I would just like to counsel a quick comment back to Councillor Strachan on that. No point have I said that heritage proposal and heritage project should be city specific. I actually think that you are greatly missing the point, actually, if we're not considering the amazing history of Armitage Shanks, which is right here in our district. Very few people from not very far away would actually be able to identify the village of Armitage being involved with that. Yet the name is known so widely for obvious reasons. Paisley Basin has a huge history and a huge part of the Industrial Revolution. And again, it would be absolutely remiss of us to not really understand that and use that to help us drive our economy, along with the other parts of the canal network which crisscross the region, and indeed the rivers Mease, Tame and Bourne. We have proud mining history in Hansacre, Chasetown, Chase Terrace, Boney Hay and further afield. We have excellent historical documents. I want to pick out Maze in Ridware as a place where, without documentation, without it's not quite a census, but without censuses that were undertaken there, we wouldn't know what we now know about the Black Death and about bubonic plague and about those pandemics. There is so much history and so much that we can look back on, be proud of in our district, using all of that from around the entire district, as well as the proud ecclesiastical history of the city, as well as the proud scientific history of the city with the Lunar Society and various other groups of thinkers and cities, philosophers, etc. So it is really important that we do, I think, that we don't, I think, lose track of that. I am, however, most pleased to see this council going back to the drawing board at the request of overview and scrutiny and really looking at those grants to voluntary community sector groups. The initial proposal was to not have that inflationary uplift. I'd like to thank Councillor Strachan for really hearing that and not only going to an inflationary uplift, but also extending that. These groups do such invaluable work for many, many, many people in our community from right across the district. It all cardinal points from where we are standing. And I think making sure that we do have the requisite support in place for those is not only the right thing to do, but actually a lot of the work that they will do will prevent further costs coming to this council and others further down the line because of the interventions that they're able to make in our communities. I think I would have liked a couple of those projects that I've mentioned there to be a little bit larger. But in looking at this in the round, there's a phrase about babies and bathwaters that came to mind. So I think looking at that, we were very, very happy to see them there. Whilst we can always argue that there should be more money, it isn't always easy to find that money, and it is excellent to see that they are there. Having been through all the reasons that I think this is an excellent medium-term financial strategy, I think it would be disingenuous of me to not mention the parlous state of local government finance across the nation, as I know Councillor Strachan did. Now, there are major issues for top-tier authorities that are dealing with children and adult social care. But whilst we don't necessarily have those cost drivers, we are not actually immune to the difficulties that local government is finding in its finances. We have, since 2010, had our government revenue funding cut by over 73%. And this budget does include some point in 2028 or maybe 2029, a point where we will dip below that minimum reserve level, and we will be in a position where we will have to release reserves, or we have to find some other way to meet those costs. We have to recognise that. It will lead, I think, potentially later on this year to a very odd situation where 21 members of this council will be out there campaigning for a Conservative government, but hoping for a Labour government to come in and fix local government finance. We will also have 7 members who will actively be campaigning against the Labour government that we all need, but there will be at least 17 of us out there campaigning for and hoping for the Labour government that everybody in this district deserves. I would like to move on to the council tax proposal. It was interesting to hear the leader standing up and being very proud of the fact that, you know, we haven't gone for the maximum council tax increase, and, you know, we want to be a low tax authority, and we want to make sure we're doing every single thing we can to reduce costs. So by going for 2.66% instead of 2.99%, which was the maximum possible, they have saved somebody living, or the council tax bill for a family living in a Band D property, a whole, and pleased, I'm glad people are sitting, because it will have saved people 62 pence a year. For somebody living on their own in a Band A property, the difference between the 2.66 that we are increasing council tax or proposing to increase council tax and the 2.99 that would have been the maximum is less than 4 pence a month. It's about 3.5 pence a month for somebody living on their own in a Band A. That is not money that people will realise. That is an absolutely trivial amount of money per month to be trying to stand here and say that it's some great sweeping victory that we have run. I understand the political narrative. I understand the need for colleagues opposite to be able to say that we are low tax, given particularly the way that national government has operated recently. But I think we can very easily miss the fact that for lots of our residents, the saving will be less than 4 pence per month. On the other side of that coin, over the course of this medium-term financial strategy, that single decision to raise council tax this year and this year only by 2.66% and not 2.99% will cost this council in the region of £100,000, £106,000 before deductions, if anybody's willing to do the maths. That is an amazingly expensive press release. That is an amazingly expensive press release because I do not think that we will find many of our residents who are leaping for joy tomorrow morning when they read the minutes of this meeting to see that they have been saved less than a penny a week in a lot of cases. But in the process, this council will be £100,000 worse off over the course of this medium-term financial strategy. It is an odd decision to have made. Having said that, Chair, I do think there are many reasons to commend this medium-term financial strategy. Some places where we obviously disagree. I think people can potentially see where I may be going with this. Yeah, at that point I'll close. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Woodward, Councillor Ray, Councillor Trent, and then Councillor Cox. Oh, and I've now got Councillor Wilcox, Councillor. Right. So Councillor Woodward, while I make my list.
Thank you, Chair. And can I reiterate thanks to the Finance Officer and his team for the work that's been done on this MTFS, but also to Councillor Strachan and to our representative, Councillor Robertson, for the discussions that have been undertaken in the formation of the medium-term financial strategy. It is good that some of the priorities that the Labour group have put forward have been accommodated, and that is extremely refreshing, and I welcome the fact that that's happened. The principal opposition group, the Labour group, started discussing what our priorities were at the end of last summer. That included a long-awaited master plan for Burntwood. That's on page 77 of the report if people want to look it up, and funding for the heritage projects, and also funding for individual ward projects, which I'm assured is now included in the UK Shared Prosperity Fund budget. I'm also pleased that the suggestion of the unexpected £100,000 windfall being supplementing the voluntary and community sector funding by £50,000, and I'd also be happy to support the additional £50,000 going into apprenticeship schemes. But for me, this MTFS is a classic curate's egg, good only in parts. As far as Burntwood is concerned, we've been asking for some sort of master plan for Burntwood to match the city master plan for a very long time, and we've called this the blueprint for Burntwood. In 2019, as the then leader of the opposition group, I suggested that we could put forward £1 million for Burntwood and £750,000 for the rural villages in order to kickstart a number of regeneration projects. They were costed, detailed in terms of the funds being used and the funds expended. They were verified by our finance officer. This was rejected, including by a significant number of people who are here in this chamber tonight. And I'm not naive enough to think that any change in accommodating the principal opposition's group priorities has anything to do but with the fact that this is a no overall control council. Up to 75,000 then is far less than I was asking for how many years ago? 5 years ago. And it doesn't meet either the expectations of Burntwood, which have frankly been very low in terms of what Lichfield District Council does for us, and it certainly doesn't meet the needs. And similarly, up to 75,000 for a heritage project, which, as Councillor Robertson's explained, is a pan-district plan. It is not just about focusing on Samuel Johnson and Erasmus Darwin, eminent though they are. Our history across the whole district is far deeper and wider than that. And this is about developing employment opportunities, volunteering opportunities, promoting inclusion and promoting community engagement. And as such, up to £75,000 is very small beer in delivering that sort of project. Besides that, where is the capital and the revenue spending that will follow on from a master plan for Burntwood or a heritage plan for the district? I noted Councillor Strachan's comment about how this MTFS will deliver action on dilapidated buildings. Well, if I just mention in the town centre of Burntwood, there's a building called The Oak, which has been empty for at least 20 years now. And in spite of attempts by the town council and at one point with the district council, nothing has been done about that. And it's a blight on our town centre. I hope that Councillor Strachan will look into the background to The Oak and make sure that something is different. This council is certainly changing. The political landscape changed last May, and that's forced it into changing. It is becoming far more focused on communities. It is becoming more inclusive of different political opinions. But it seems to me that the controlling group are listening, but only with half an ear. And so I can't fully support this medium-term financial strategy for the reasons that Councillor Robertson has outlined, nor can I support the proposal of 2.66% on the council tax. Just to put us the whole debate into context, I'd said to my group, this is probably the most important debate of the whole year. And while people groan when they see the list of councillors who want to contribute, I think it's really important that as many people as possible contribute to this debate. This sets the plan, not just for the next year, but for the next 4 or 5 years. But in order to sort of put ourselves back in a box, I would just recommend that members read the responses to the consultation. There's a budget consultation every year, and people in our district give us their views. And the very first one says, why should I do the council's work for them? What a complete waste of time and money this gimmick is. You get paid to do the budget, etc. for the council. Sit on and do your job. Stop wasting everyone's time. Well, rather than extend the debate any further, I'll stop wasting that particular constituent's time and make sure that we go to a vote as soon as possible. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. It was Councillor Ray next.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to start by saying I want to thank Councillor Strachan for a initiative that we brought forward. He's indicated he will be able to support as part of the MTFS for the year ahead, which is a proposal we brought forward to an economic generation project, an event where we promote Lichfield to employers looking to relocate to set up here in the West Midlands, and so that we are front and centre of those employers. So I thank him for that support, and I know Councillor Sylvester Hall has also expressed support for that as well. But we also, as a group, have reservations, and just to pull out 2 items. One is this could do more to support the climate change, the environmental agenda. And with the community voluntary sector support, we very much support the increase, but we had a proposal which hasn't been taken forward, but I hope this council will consider it as we go forward, which is an element of that to be ring-fenced for the young, for charities and groups and community groups that face out into the younger generation. So there is a specific pool that will support support that. That's separate to the separate to the budget that is allocated to the Youth Council, so that we are really trying to support and promote those activities that support the younger generation and amongst our community. But with the two items, 214 and 215, which are the highlighted ones, we are happy to support those. The council reduction scheme, that is important, has been expressed. Residents are struggling in these times of high cost of living, and so that support scheme rolling forward for another year is something that we welcome. And the second homes policy. Now, I appreciate at this stage that is it's going to go through an options appraisal, so it's going to be fully reviewed. But again, we support that as part of a policy to bring more housing onto the market and make more available for our community. So what I would ask, I guess maybe through the chair, is when we come to vote on the MTFS, chair, if we could have a separate vote for 214 and 215, those two agenda items, please. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Trent was next.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to speak to item recommendation 2.1 in the report, and also the section from 3.21, so the revenue budget. When we look at the detail of the approved revenue budgets for this year and for 2024 and 25, there is a line on climate change initiatives. This is picking up on what Councillor Ray was saying. In the current year, there's a budget for £50,000 for climate change initiatives. In itself, not a huge sum, but for the forthcoming year, that drops to zero. So no budget at all. I would suggest that's a matter of concern. As we all know, the climate emergency is one of the biggest challenges facing us. And of course, this council, before I darkened its door in 2019, voted to declare a climate emergency, recognising the need for urgent action on that issue. Since 2019, of course, we've continued to see the effects of climate change nationwide, but also significant flooding in our own district. Within this council, with the hard work of officers and councillor colleagues, we have started to see positive initiatives. And the kind of consultation that's planned with residents, I understand later this year, I would suggest is a very positive initiative. And in our last council meeting, our last meeting in December, Councillor Woodward commended Councillor Wilcox for his climate change efforts. And that's in the minutes, so we can't take that back. With all that, I do see it as very disappointing and perhaps very troubling that the budget drops to zero on this issue in the forthcoming year. The fact is that these initiatives need proper funding, and I don't believe we can solely rely on voluntary or charity sector funding for an issue that's important, and that this council should take the lead on that issue. It may be, Chair, that Councillor Strachan and Councillor Wilcox can assure us today that all of this important work can carry on without a budget for it this year, or that the work is being met elsewhere. And if so, I would welcome that. I want to hear it. But as it is, my question for them is, how do we honour this council's commitment to tackle the climate emergency with a budget of zero for climate change initiatives? Thank you, Chair. With your leave, just a brief question, brief point on 2.15 of the report as well. Just picking up what others have said on the council tax reduction scheme. This was an issue I raised at ONS, and I welcome the commitment there, the explicit confirmation that council tax reduction scheme is to continue in the forthcoming year. Of course, I would say it's essential to support those who need that assistance when council tax is to rise. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Had Councillor Cox next, if you can.
Thank you, Chair. I fully support the recommendations, and I'm particularly pleased, as you would expect, that we have listened in terms of the proposal on the CVS and I look forward to obviously working with officers there and discussions with councillor Woodward on those proposals going forward. But I do welcome it. I think it's important that obviously to support the recommendations is supporting the detail as well within it. So I will be voting for in the vote.
Thank you. Councillor Norman, I think no, sorry, Councillor Wilcox. Yeah, no, you're quite right. Councillor Wilcox is next. Councillor M. Wilcox.
Thank you, Chair, for that, and I appreciate Councillor Norman for putting the record straight on that. Good evening, colleagues. I would suspect for all of us the issue of dealing with our finances and decisions on how we spend is probably one of the most major quandaries that we all have to deal with on a daily basis. The decisions we subsequently take are based upon our needs and wants, and those don't always match up, as has been previously mentioned. And for many of us and our residents, the last 12 months have been extremely challenging, particularly around inflation, interest rates, and of course the cost of living challenges, not forgetting rising energy costs. As a council, we are no different in the way we look at our finances and decide what areas we want to spend our limited funds on each year, and where efficiencies and savings can be achieved, which we have done over the past 12 months and beyond. Members may well be aware that late December, we get our settlement from central government, which at present is a one-year funding figure. You will also know that local authorities and the LGA are lobbying strongly for multi-year settlements going forward, which would aid our budgeting process. So we do understand and appreciate the pressures our residents face. And as a council, we have also faced similar pressures, particularly around energy costs and inflation. After saying all that, we know and recognise the services that we deliver are important to our residents, which we have delivered year on year. Set against all that, we still, through prudent and detailed financial controls, still remain one of the lowest council tax charging authorities, not only within Staffordshire, but also nationally. That is why any decision to increase the burden put on our residents is not done lightly and follows weeks and months of intensive scrutiny of our finances by both the portfolio holder and, importantly, Anthony Thomas and his team of officers, in ensuring that we have a balanced budget to propose tonight at this council meeting. We strive to ensure that we deliver value for money in all that we do when providing our core statutory services, which we know are valued by our residents. Equally, as a responsible authority, we need to look ahead and put in place the building blocks for growth and prosperity in the district and provide facilities and opportunities that encourage good health and well-being and the supply of decent housing, which we're all doing as part of our strategic plan. We also know that there are many unknowns around funding streams in the future, such as business rates, fair funding review, and the new homes bonus, which collectively will pose a high level of uncertainty, particularly as we know at some stage there will be a general election before the next budget papers are produced next May. Chair, we have before us tonight a well thought out medium-term financial strategy that has been tested and challenged that will continue to give excellent value for money to our residents across the whole district. And therefore, I'm happy to support the paper and the Council Tax Resolution 2024-2025. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got, I think, already to speak, Councillor Norman, Councillor Ball and Councillor Marshall. I hope that will be enough. And perhaps if people are just making general points, they could be very brief. Councillor Norman.
No, I'm always specific, Chair, in my submission. So the first one to say, though, is again, just to add my voice to those praising the staff from Anthony Thomas onwards, because you do have confidence then in your own figures that you're looking at and making decisions. And that seems not to be the case in some other councils. So at least we have that confidence, and I'm grateful for that. Councillor Strachan and I think Michael just mentioned about the 12 months that we get in our budget information. I was looking at the integrated care board. They get 13 months apparently, so we're even worse off than they are. I'm also aware that the Local Government Association have pointed out that probably about a fifth of councils in England and Wales are likely to go bust. I mean, that's the phrase that's always used, and don't know how accurate that is, but it's certainly a very large number and one of concern, especially as we never know what's around the corner, except of course there is a general election. The idea that we're not suggesting, has been suggested a maximum here, well, you know, come on. I've been around for a while now. Of course, you never suggest the maximum, do you? You just say a little less than the maximum. But it's close. It's close. And it's even closer at the county because we've 4 members here tonight, or well, 3 members, 4 would normally be here, and they'll be voting for the maximum at the county. So they'll be, you know, along with the Police and Crime Commission, that's £88.93 extra that people will be paying as opposed to our £5. So, you know, different places, different things. Can I just say, as chair of scrutiny, with that hat on, I'm very grateful for Councillor Strachan and the way he's always conducted himself and willing to listen to overview and scrutiny members and personally for me as well, any issues that have been raised. I'm genuinely grateful for that, and his colleagues, to be fair now, and this new system we have here at in Lichfield District. But I do have another hat, and that's my Labour Party hat on, and I have difficulty in saying you're not going to oppose the budget, but it's difficult to support it because it's a bit like, well, if you support the budget, you support the lousy, rotten government that has put you into this position. You're going to go out in May and support this lousy, rotten government again, or October, and you're going to support the lousy, rotten MP as well. Well, I ain't going to do any of those things, so I can't vote for the budget like that. It's like a joke in some ways.
Wow.
So, I mean, we did leave them with £24 million in the budget way, but I know you don't like to hear it, but we left you with £24 million, and where is it now? All spent, of course. So yes, I'll be abstaining. I shan't be supporting the government that has put us in this position, and I certainly shan't be supporting a parliamentary candidate that's standing for the Conservatives that could put us in this position again next year. And okay, maybe there's going to be lots and lots of money coming from HS2, but you know, I don't believe it.
Thank you,
Thank you.
I think we'll all get a chance to vote. But anyway, Councillor Ball.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to start by commending both Councillor Strachan and Anthony Thomas and his team for managing to produce yet again a balanced budget in spite of all the best efforts of central government over the past 14 years, and particularly recently in the ill-fated Liz Truss government in trying to undermine the economy and damage the district and as well as the rest of the country. I'd also like to commend both Councillor Strachan and Councillor Pullen for the marvellous spin they put on saving people in the district a penny a week, is it? Thereabouts. But more seriously, looking at a couple of things, fine today, but let's look ahead. Councillor Robertson's already mentioned 27, 28, 28, 29. If you look at item 1.18 on page 72, and more graphically on page 79, the graph at 3.27, it shows a dramatic gap between our income and our spending, with our spending going up and our income coming down. So I look forward to the general election and hope for a Labour government that will come in and sort this mess out that's put us in this position. But I'd like to ask Councillor Strachan particularly on 1.18. The council will therefore need to identify potential options to close any funding gap. I'd like to hear some examples of those options and hope it's not another round of cuts that we've got coming down the road, and hope that it's more appropriately some positive aims and means of generating a better Lichfield district for all.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Marshall. And then I'm going to take Councillor Booker, but that is the last one. Well, yeah.
Just echoing the words of Councillor Ball there, well, at least the first dozen words of Councillor Ball, where he commended Councillor Strachan. Yes, I'll limit it to the first 12 words and not the diatribe that followed. Well, it was a diatribe of...
All right, just can we get on with it?
Yes, I would like to commend Councillor Strachan for his delivery, which I thought was erudite and very detailed and superb, and did credit to him. And also to the officers, Anthony Thomas and co as well, for doing a superb job. I'll be as succinct as I can. If you understand the principles of a standard deviation curve, you will know that there will always be outliers at the extremes. I am perhaps an outlier at one of the extremes when it comes to climate change. Now, I'm going to echo the words of someone last week, not a heretic, but the boss of Ineos, a very large company throughout Europe. Jim Ratcliffe, who is the boss, said that this country was fully unaware of the likely cost of implementing carbon net zero. I think as a country, we've underestimated it, and it is a concern of mine that this council will also underestimate the enormous cost of implementing it. So a word of caution, really, that before we embrace the culture of carbon net zero, we do actually look at the likely cost, because I think it is going to be exorbitant and probably unaffordable.
Right, I think I'm going to stop you there because we're not going to discuss climate change now. Councillor Booker.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Councillor Strachan, for mentioning me by name, and that's why I feel I must reply. You state that you will try to find money for the rural areas in the future. You state this is what we can do when we work together. And if that's the case, I am extremely disappointed in you. What we can really do when we work together is far more exciting and ambitious than this. How can I tell my residents I support this budget when you will try to find money for them, and yet you manage to find money for projects such as paddle tennis? And a point of note, page 119, Annex C, line 17. I've been reassured in 2 overview and scrutiny meetings, plus by other members outside of those meetings, that the amount was 300,000, and yet there on line 17, it clearly states 400,000. How do I tell my residents that you will try to find money for the rural areas, and yet you manage to find money for paddle tennis? Thank you.
Right. Okay, now we're trying, I'm going to ask the Chief Operating Officer about the vote that oh, sorry, Councillor Pullen, I've forgotten you. Oh, and Councillor Strachan, I've forgotten, Councillor, yeah. Okay, yeah. It's all right, Councillor Strachan then. Do you want to, oh, Councillor Pullen.
Actually, Councillor Pullen goes first.
Yeah, Councillor Pullen, then Councillor Strachan. Sorry, I will get there.
Thank you, Chair. I will most certainly keep it short, Councillor Woodward. Just to address some of the points that I think were raised tonight, and I think I would summarise this overall as a feeling of collegiality, but perhaps some main areas of difference. Councillor Robertson, 2.66% rise is certainly not some grandiose achievement that meant we didn't have to go for the maximum. What 2.66 represents is a thoughtful budget, which meant instead of lazily perhaps just going for the maximum, actually sticking to the bare minimum that we possibly could. So yes, we will not go for the maximum, but yeah, that's born out of hard work of officers and colleagues to go for the bare minimum. You are right, Councillor Robertson, that residents won't notice the effect of that council tax rise, particularly if you live in Lichfield City, where it will be dwarfed by the 7% council tax rise that you've implemented for your residents. Councillor Norman, do we go for the maximum? Well, we certainly have done in times recently. Last time Labour were in power in Lichfield District, they must have gone for the maximum because they managed to rise council tax by almost 30% in 4 years. That compares to around 20% in a random council like North Warwickshire, for instance. That certainly wasn't up and down the country. And Councillor Norman, to a final point, you did leave £24 million in the bank by selling off the entire housing stock of Lichfield District Council under a new Labour government. We now have £56 million in investments and the revenue from that is helping support our ongoing revenue budget on an annual basis. So if there is some credit to be had, Councillor Norman, selling off the housing stock in the 90s means that we now have some support for our revenue budget today. So thank you, Councillor Norman. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. No. Oh, well, very quick.
Only point of information, actually, the tenants in this council, which I couldn't believe didn't have central heating and all sorts of basic things we had in North Warwickshire, they did vote to have a housing association instead of the lousy, rotten council that weren't doing the job at the time. Just for information.
I obviously approve of, I'm obviously entirely approval of history lessons, but we're quite late in the evening, so we'll perhaps hear Councillor Strachan.
Thank you, Chairman. I will attempt to speak in roundup. I would like to thank all members for their comments and observations, and I'll try and deal with as many as I possibly can. Firstly, on Councillor Robertson, and in fact, Councillor Woodward made the same point about the £1 million for Burnwood. Yes, you're quite right that proposal was made. I remember it distinctly. I was chairing scrutiny at the time. I can't speak to what level of discussion or debate had taken place before the MTFS meeting and before tonight, but it came across very much like it was presented on the night. This, I would submit, Councillor Woodward, Councillor Robertson, is a little different in that we have discussed this with you throughout the budget setting process, and that's how we've come to this point. And so this has been through collaboration and collegiality. Councillor Robertson, I also accept I may have misspoken when I spoke to Citywide Elements, and I could not possibly miss out your hymn of praise to the heritage of our district without speaking to those who promote it external to this council. And I particularly name check at this point Lichfield Discovered, formerly known as Lichfield Law, and John O'Oates, both of whom I am an avid reader of. The interest taken and the way of sharing that with the wider public via the publications, both online and in print, that they have really been fascinating, and I sincerely look forward to building some of it in as we go forwards and as we use that funding. Councillor Robertson called me up on council tax. I would attempt to defend myself. This is not, in fact, born of political narrative, and I am no apologist for the government, as I think my opening speech may have suggested. When I worked in the probation service, Councillor Robertson, some of my clients genuinely did budget to the penny and found it that difficult. And so I don't attempt to hide behind the fact that, yes, this is pennies for the majority of our residents, but sometimes that can make a difference. Also, when this MTFS was originally drafted, £5 or 1.99% was the maximum. And so this was to be a maximum increase. So please don't think I'm doing this for the headlines. It's simply because I will not, on principle grounds, levy via taxation more than I feel is strictly necessary. And so this is set at that level because it was affordable at that level, not just because central government says that I can have a little bit more. Please, thank you very much. Councillor Woodward also referred to the bijou size of the £75,000 revenue funding pots that have been identified, and I would take the moment just to refer to them as revenue funding. This is to get projects started, payment on the day. To start a project and then not follow through with it seems a little irregular when one is an authority. Well, county may do it all the time, Sue, but we're not going to. I apologise, Councillor Woodward. County may do it all the time, but we're not going to. They will subsequently require capital funding, and that is what we're unlocking through the capital projects that I'm proposing to you this evening and will be as we go forwards. I'm not going to respond to the budget consultee who said that we're asking them to do our job for us, because consulting on the budget, members will be aware, is a statutory duty on us as a council. And so we may be asking them to comment on the budget, but not to do the job. Picking up on observations made by Councillors Ray and Trent, Councillor Ray, you're quite right. I did commit to the economic generation event that you've spoken to. I know that Councillor Sylvester Hall is also on board with that. The amount that would require in the budget is relatively small, and so it doesn't get a line of its own, but it is something that we are committed to as we come forwards. Perhaps there's been a little bit of confusion around the budget for climate change, though. Members who were here 4 years ago, yes, you were. I remember you. We committed £100,000 funding to exploring climate change initiatives, and through a combination of pandemic and perhaps not benchmarking quite as well as we should have done, we've actually only managed to spend £50,000 of that so far. So the £50,000 identified in the budget under climate change is what remains of the £100,000 we committed 4 years ago. It is inevitable that this is going to require more than £50,000. Councillor Marshall, in one of the few elements that I actually agree with him on climate change, referred to the fact that it is immensely expensive potentially to address. And so Councillor Wilcox has been carrying out a piece of work that's, I think you've briefed now 2 or 3 times, that is going to bring forward proposals around climate change, but that will develop its own budget. And at the moment, we don't know what that is. And so that is something that we will be bringing forward. And I sincerely hope that reassures my friends from the Liberal Democrat benches that, no, we're not saying £50,000 in year 1 and nothing thereafter. That's not how this is going to work. We recognise that this is an issue. We declared a climate emergency for a reason. We will address it. The highlighted items at 2.14 and 5 are highlighted for one very special reason, and that is that they were inserted post-scrutiny. And so they have not been through the passage of overview and scrutiny. I'm not sure, Chairman, and this is of course a matter for you, whether it is entirely appropriate to deal with those separately as items, simply because in the course of the debate, I've not heard a single dissenting voice. And so it may be, Chair,
I think we can do it. We've been discussing that.
I'm glad that that's what that meeting was for, because it made sense. Councillor Norman referred to a fifth of councils going bust. Well, I'm reassured by Anthony that it's not going to be us, and that he currently does not envisage issuing a Section 114 notice in the forthcoming years. And I am, Chair, very, very grateful to the efforts of overview and scrutiny, who were scrupulously fair and very helpful in the passage through that. And I did miss that off my opening remarks as I thank the scrutiny, so I do so. Councillor Pullen's already said what we did with the £24 million. We built Burntwood Leisure Centre, we built the Garrick Theatre, we completed land acquisition just over the road, and we developed out our own offices to provide incubator space for a number of other businesses. And we have £57 million invested, although admittedly we can't access all of that just now. So that's what we did with the £24 million. Councillor Ball referred to the future projections. I don't seek to minimise the hole that local government finance is in. And I think it would be entirely inappropriate of me to try and do that on my feet here. But that fall off is largely a product of the uncertainty rather necessarily than because we are running out of money. We don't put anything that isn't guaranteed in the budget, which means that we have that certainty in years 1 and 2. We don't have it in years 3 and 4. That lack of certainty extends not only to income, but also to return on what we're doing in these phases. And so I sincerely hope, if I'm lucky enough to be in this chair in 1 year's time, we will see that curve pushed a further year back and that we'll never actually reach the end. On Councillor Booker's point about rural funding, again, I probably spoke carelessly in saying I hope to unlock that. I intend to unlock that. I do not minimise how little we have given to rural areas. And the question that you asked me on the very first council meeting when we were together really drew that into stark focus. The way of unlocking that funding, I believe, is by doing what we're going to do in year 1 and then investing that. And you can, by all means, hold me to it as we go forwards. And the Rural Services Network briefing that you very kindly shared and that I'd read just 5 minutes before I read your email really did bring that into stark focus for the needs of rural wards and what we need to do. And so I will find a way to do that. I intend to, and I hold by it. Chair, I think I've addressed all points in rebuttal that I need to and reassured councillors as much as I can. I have seen a few nods and I've also seen a few angry looks. I believe that as a local government finance resolution, this requires a named vote. And so it's for me to hand over to you, Chair.
Right, thank you very much. I'll just need to confirm with the Chief Operating Officer that we can, that we can deal with Councillor Ray's point and Chief Monitoring Officer, sorry, yeah. Sorry, the Chief Monitoring Officer. Oh, right, yes, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just to say it is an option if the chair chooses to take, I believe it's 2.14 and 2.15 that Councillor Ray had asked for to be voted on separately. So that
and I think we can do that with a show of hands.
That's if you've done with a show of hands, and we will move
and
to
then the main thing will be a named
on
vote.
that.
Yeah. So I don't know then if do we need a proposal or can I just
to take the vote?
Yeah, can we propose?
Councillor Ray, I'm sorry, just to clarify, did you want to take 2.14 and then 2.15 separately?
No, happy to take them together. And do you want me to propose that? And
Yeah.
councillor Trent might second.
Yeah. So then all those in favour of specifically item on page 73, 2.14 and 2.15. That's everybody. So I think that's unanimous. Okay. Okay. And so we now proceed to a named vote on the complete recommendations and the council tax.
Sorry, Chairman, just before we do, could I just remind members that in accordance with section 106 of the Local Government Finance Act 1992, any member in council tax arrears is unable to participate in the decision-making in relation to the budget and council tax setting.
And can I say that's been checked and we're all paid up, so. Sorry? No, we're going to do it all together. Yeah, we're doing both together. So it's the general recommendations and the council tax as a named vote that the chief nominated, or the chief operator, well, one of these chief officers, the proper chief officer will do it. And it'll all be legal.
Thank you. So I'll now invite each councillor in turn to indicate whether they are for, against or abstain. Anketel?
Abstain.
Ashton? Ball?
Abstain.
Banavicis? Benyon?
Abstain.
Booker? Braga?
Abstain.
Checkland? Cox? Cross? L. Ennis? Evans? Galvin? Harvey Coggins? Henshaw? Hill? Ho? Holland? Hughes?
Abstain.
Leong? Marshall? Mears? Norman? Powell? Pullen? Ray? Robertson?
Abstain.
Rushton? Salter? Sylvester Hall? A. Smith? J. Smith? Strachan? P. Taylor? S. Taylor? Trent? Vernon? Whitehouse? M. Wilcox? S. Wilcox? Woodward?
Abstain.
And Yates. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, that's clearly carried. I don't know if you want to tell us the numbers, but okay. Right, thank you all very much. I've no idea what the time is, so I hope we don't need to. Sorry? Oh, right, we won't need to suspend standing orders with any luck. Okay, then item 12 is appointment to committees. Some changes are to be proposed, and Councillor Woodward and Councillor Pullen are to be invited to speak. I've got Councillor Pullen first, or Councillor? Yeah.
I'll propose the changes to the committees as per the paper. Thank you, Chair.
Oh, right, sorry, on the, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Chair, I have to say I'm disappointed that these changes, which include the change of a chair of a committee weren't conveyed to me, or I believe to Councillor Ray as the leader of the Lib Dem group. Some changes were flagged up and we responded to those, and these, however, are not happening now. So while I'm happy to agree with the proposals for changes of personnel on committees, there is one proposal that I'm going to propose an amendment for, and that is to nominate Councillor Rosie Harvey-Coggins as the chair of the Employment Committee. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. So do we need a seconder for that?
Second is the amendment.
Yeah, seconder. So you're proposing an amendment to the list that's been circulated today, right? Yes. So yeah. So Councillor Woodward has proposed that the chair of employment be Councillor Harvey-Coggins, and I think Councillor Bragger seconded that as chair of the employment committee. Can we have all those in favour of that amendment? So, all right. Oh, right, but I think we have, yeah, I think we have to, I think, as I understand it, these have been proposed by the party leaders. Well, I think Councillor Wilcox, I mean, there's some confusion about, but I think that's, I don't know if that's a matter for the full, I think these are the proposals you put on. Yes, yeah. There was a proposal to appoint a councillor as chair of employment. There's been an amendment to that. And I think the voting is
22 in favour of the amendment, so we just need to
those against that amendment, sorry, yes. So can we have people voting against that amendment? Yeah, I think you're against. Yeah.
That's fine. The amendment's carried.
I think there's a proposal to include council.
So the amendment to include Councillor Coggins is carried.
Right.
So then we have to have a vote.
Okay, right. We've now got, yeah, the amendment to these motions then includes now Councillor Harvey-Coggins as to be proposed as chair of the employment committee. So it suggests it's well, you've got it written down, haven't you? Councillor S. Wilcox to be appointed to regulatory and licensing and overview and scrutiny, removed from employment and planning. Councillor Warfield to be removed from regulatory and licensing and appointed to employment. Councillor Hawkins removed from overview and scrutiny and appointed to planning. And then and Councillor Taylor, S. Taylor, to be appointed to planning. And then we now have Councillor Harvey-Coggins to be appointed as chair of employment committee. I think that's, that's what was delivered to us. I don't think I can do anything. Yeah, Councillor Henshaw.
Madam Chair, what was the voting figure, please?
The vote is 22 to 20.
16.
22 to 16 for the amendment. Yeah, and I think there's been some agreement perhaps to add, is that including Councillor? Yeah, no, that's we're just because it's quite a tricky situation. We're We're just taking our time and it's only 8:05. So we vote now on the substantive motion of appointments to committee, which is as stated, except for the chair of employment, which is Councillor Harvey Coggins. So we vote all those in favour. It can be 20. All right, okay. Oh, yes, it can be. Yeah, I was just thinking. Yeah. Sorry, no, I've not voted on this. Yeah. It's because Councillor Mears and yeah. So all those against. You know, I think we're having Councillor. So that's carried by 23 to 17. I think it does if, remember, there we've got independent councillors. Well, I think we're including Councillor Long in these votes. No. Oh, they're abstentions.
Point of order.
Sorry.
I don't think it's up to Councillor Salter to question the decision
Well, if
after
it
a vote
doesn't,
has been
no,
taken.
he's not questioning the decision. It is just the arithmetic. Yeah, I think it's, yeah.
Chair, I don't think it's up to Councillor Salter to question the numbers when they've clearly been given by the officers.
All right, okay, well, but yeah, we can move on.
Not everybody.
Yeah, not everybody voted the first time. We'll move on.
We just need the majority anyway. So.
Councillor Harvey Coggins would like to say, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to take this opportunity after that vote to thank this council for the opportunity to take Lichfield District Council even further towards a collegiate working model. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harvey Coggins, and congratulations. Now we move on then to item 14. Oh no, 13, which is a mystery item, I think. Councillor Pullen is going to reveal to me at any rate which councillor is going to be appointed to the university, hospitals, etc.
That was a mystery to me until a second ago. Chair, I'd like to nominate Councillor Richard Cox to be the representative of Lichfield District Council of the University Hospital Trust. Thank you.
Right. Do we have a seconder for that? Oh, right. Okay. Right. So collegiality has broken out. Is there any debate? It says following any debate. Okay. So all those in favour? Aye. Aye. Yeah. Against? Oh no, they're just putting their hands down slowly. Right, okay. Any abstentions? Okay, one, right, okay. Thank you all very much and congratulations to Councillor Cox. Item 14 is the calendar of meetings. Can I call on Councillor Pullen to speak on this item?
Chair, I move the calendar of meetings as per the papers and agenda item number 14. Thank you.
Do I have a seconder for the calendar of meetings? Yeah, Councillor Woodward or Councillor Marshall. I don't know who I saw Councillor Woodward first, I think, but that's fine because I wasn't looking the right way.
Yes, I'll formally second that calendar of meetings, but can I ask all councillors to make sure that they make a note of the meetings in their diaries later on this evening when they get home?
That's very good advice. Yes, thank you. And so is everyone, It's, again, it says following any debate, but there probably isn't any debate. So all those in favour? Aye, good. Anyone against? No, thank you. Right. Oh, okay, we get to item 15 then. Motions on notice. We have two motions. The first has been submitted by Councillor Braga. And call on Councillor Braga to propose the motion.
Thank you, Chair. I'm proposing this motion because I believe it will have wide support in the district and it is the right thing to do. I don't understand why it hasn't already been implemented by the current leaders of the council and why this needs to be done now. I think everyone accepts there's a great shortage of social housing across Lichfield district. According to the council information sheet in 2023, there were typically 400 people on the list for social housing. And we may need to look at or widen the eligibility under the scheme to allow for low-paid Lichfield residents to continue to live in the district. The supposed affordable homes included in private housing developments are not affordable to families on low incomes. The private rented sector is expensive and does not necessarily give the security of a long-term settled tenancy. This council has the ability to build and manage social housing, and it has the resource. There is capital available from developers' levies, some left over from historic sale of council houses, and I understand the council is able to borrow at a rate of about 5%, and the typical return on social housing is about 8%. So this should not impact other council service budgets. I think it's unfair that low-paid families, particularly young people, have to move out of Lichfield because they're priced out of accommodation. The details of building or buying and managing these houses will need to be worked out by the Lichfield West Midlands Trading Services Company, and I hope they will liaise with a cross-party group of councillors in doing this. If this motion is passed, I hope it can be implemented speedily. I move.
Thank you. Does this motion have it? Yes, Councillor Ashton is going to.
I'm happy to so second. I reserve my right to speak further on the motion later.
Thank you. And Councillor Pullen, I think, wants to respond.
Thank you, Chair. We would be absolutely delighted to support this motion put forward by Councillor Braga. And yet somehow I think that he might already know that we're going to support it. On the 19th of January, Councillor Ball wrote to our 151 officer to inquire after the financial viability of Lichfield District Council or our LATCO building homes for rent. And in response to that email, dated the 22nd of January, Councillors Ball and Councillor Woodward were informed that Cabinet had already given a steer on this issue and that the Chief Exec would like to brief these councillors ASAP, a briefing which I'm sure has taken place since. In fact, the figures that Councillor Braga has just used there, about 5% return and 8% return on social housing, came from that very first email response from our 151 officer. So great motion. I think the group already are aware that this was already underway. You point out that perhaps you're not sure why the leadership team are already not implementing this. As I've stated, we are already in process. I'm grateful for this motion to come forward, but it does rather come into question, pull into question the disingenuity or not of the motion. We will absolutely be supporting, and we're glad to see that this has support from across the chamber. Thank you, Chair.
Shall we have Councillor Ball then?
Thank you, Chair. I think it was Harold Wilson said that a week is a long time in politics. If that's true, then 5 years is an eternity. I first was elected to this council just under 5 years ago, and how things have changed. In those first year or so of my election, I was consistently shouted down and barracked by some councillors who fortunately are no longer here in this chamber. Specious points of order were raised against me. I very often, as some current members of the Cabinet will know, asked about the LAPCO, the housing company as it was then, building houses for rent, and was rejected out of hand time after time after time. So I think it's fantastic that we're now finally having the controlling group beginning to support this idea. It's taken 5 years, but we're getting there. So thank you for that. There's no disingenuity at all about this. We just want to make sure that it happens, because we've heard good words and sound words, and I'll come back to this later on in the question that I asked the Cabinet member who's not able to be here tonight, and the leader who will respond at a later point. Yeah, let's get it done, but let's not pretend that it's going to be an easy job. Let's not pretend that you won't need the support of a cross-party group, and let's not pretend if it wasn't for the election results in May last year that this would not be happening. I fervently believe that, given the 5 years I've been battling to get this kind of thing through. So I certainly support the motion.
Thank you. I don't know then, with Councillor, given that the indication we've had as how the vote's going to go, Councillor Ashton wants to.
Yes, I mean, obviously I'm supporting the motion. I'd also like to express my hope that when social and affordable housing is produced under this regime, that it is pepper potted with the higher end housing, and that it also includes housing in town and city centres, because I believe that this is the way forward for a vibrant and lively city centre and community. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we then move to a vote? All those in favour of the motion? Thank you. Anyone against? No, so that's carried unanimously. Good. Right, we've also then got a motion from Councillor Robertson on the Government Boundary Commission, and that's the motion that some county councillors declared an interest for. So I'll call on Councillor Robertson for that one.
Thank you, Chair. Looking at the time, I'll try and make this as brief as I can. Because I'm sure just what everybody wants at 8:15 at night after 2 hours of meeting is a discussion about local government boundaries. The proposal that's kind of been through the process with LGCBE has got us to a position now where they've updated their original proposal. The county council boundaries that we're currently using are out of date. The population has grown in certain areas and they need to update them. Their initial proposal did, in my opinion, leave much to be desired, and there is now an alternative which is being consulted on from now until the middle of next month. It is also imperfect. I think it's not the first time I've used that word tonight. It's not perfect, and I think if somebody wanted to try and make something perfect, they would probably be they'd need enough time until the next boundary review came up to get something that was perfect. What the current proposal does, sorry, the updated proposal, one that's currently out for consultation, does, I think, is better reflect particularly the rural elements and the rural areas of our district. I will very quickly talk through the differences between the proposal that's here. I'll go county council division by county council division. This has not been designed from a party political point of view. The simple fact is that our vote is so poorly distributed across the district and so inefficiently distributed, it would be impossible for me to do so without some proper American style gerrymandering going on. And I'm sure nobody would want to see that creeping its way into English and certainly UK local government. So looking at the proposals as they come, I'm going to start in Lichfield Rural South. The original proposal from LGCBE had part of the town of Burntwood, that bit of Burntwood which is in Hammerwich Wall, part of the city of Lichfield, a new section near Falkland Road, in addition to Little Aston and Stonell being in Lichfield Rural South. It meant that actually for Lichfield Rural South, I think it was just about half of the population in that rural division actually lived in at least semi-urban areas, being in the town of Burntwood, in the city of Lichfield, or in Little Aston, which is obviously very close to Streatley and elements of Warsaw. The proposal that we're hopefully going to support tonight removes Burntwood from Lichfield Rural South, removes Lichfield City from Lichfield Rural South, creates a truly rural division. It also includes Drayton Bassett. It also includes Fazeley, Myloke, Bonehill, because these areas are undoubtedly in the south of the district. And actually currently, if you live in Fazeley and you want to travel to another part of your county council division in Colton in the Ridwares, you have to drive through Tamworth. Because the boundaries as they currently are, in my opinion, don't make much sense. And the changes that we're hopefully voting on in a moment will put Drayton Bassett and Bonehill and Myloke and Fazeley back in with hints and other areas in the south of the district. Some of the knock-ons from that, Burntwood South now includes actually the entire built-up area of the south of Burntwood, because there is that anomaly around Triangle Ward, which is included in Hammerwich with Wall and in a rural division. Following on from that, Burntwood North is kind of reconfigured so that Chase Road, Bridge Cross Road that runs right down the middle of the town. Although it's always been a bit of a false boundary for a variety of reasons, it's a very clear one that everybody can understand. And actually, by making the changes that are currently in what we're discussing today, it will make it very easy for residents in the town to identify whether they're north, south of that. There is a slight anomaly around the boundaries of Summerfield and All Saints poking up near Redwood Park, but it is a much smaller anomaly than was in the original proposal from LGCBE. If I then skip over to Lichfield City South, this, in my opinion, is a much stronger proposal in that it doesn't split part of St John's Ward out to be part of a rural ward. Sorry, rural division, because that was the original proposal, that a large section of it was going to be literally bitten out of the city and transferred over to make numbers up. In terms of us as a council, there is a significant benefit to us because it prevents the creation of an additional polling district. If it were to go ahead without the amendments that have now found their way into it, we would have had to create additional polling districts and additional costs to this council. I have no problem with additional polling districts where they're necessary. Democracy is expensive, but we have to pay for it. It's worth paying for. But actually, if we can find an alternative way of doing things, which better reflect communities and all the other benefits, and it has the added bonus of it's costing us a little bit less, then I think it's something very positive for us to look at. Lichfield City North, there's no difference between the proposals. The overall change is effectively the rationalisation of the three Lichfield City North wards into a Lichfield City North division. In Lichfield Rural North, this is where it gets pretty imperfect, in my opinion. And there have been some changes. One of the changes is actually, rather than having Bowley Park split between two divisions, the whole of Bowley Park goes into one division. There is also a knock-on effect that Albury-Wars and Fradley get split. That is where I think it's very imperfect. And I won't disagree with you, Councillor Wilcox. I do think it's imperfect, but I think overall, certainly in my opinion, there's certainly strengths to be found there. Lichfield Rural West, very little change. The proposals that we are about to vote on leave Lichfield Rural West on exactly the same boundaries as it is currently on, and effectively we're removing a change that was proposed. So it's going back to how it is now. And then finally, Lichfield Rural East is by far, in my opinion, the least satisfactory of these proposals. There are significant drawbacks potentially between moving Albury-Wars from north to east, and I understand that. I do. It is imperfect, but I think given all of the other changes, the aggregate here is that this is a much better proposal, and it does meet those requirements. It does better reflect those communities as much as possible, as set out in the motion. So on that basis, Councillor Hughes, I so move.
Okay, is this motion seconded? Oh yeah, Councillor Anketel can second it. Yeah, are there any, Councillor Sylvester Hall wants to comment?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Obviously, I'm here in the capacity as representative of Hamwich with Wall, and this particular agenda item featured in their parish council meeting last week, and it was unanimously voted on that they wish to remain with the status quo. And I did say that I would come and convey that opinion to here, and that also that they would be making strong representation in the consultation, which runs up until the 12th of March. And I would very much urge anybody within the district to go and have a look at that. The initial draft recommendations that were put forward have indeed been updated on the basis of a relatively low amount of consultation feedback that was received by the Boundary Commission, and some of which was actually submitted as identical alternative proposals from what I'm informed as well. It's very much a case that when they look at doing this particular review, there's 3 statutory criteria that they're considering: equality of representation, reflecting community interests and identities, and providing for the effective and convenient local government. So when we'd had our discussion separately, I was baffled to see that part of the criteria, which is that first one, the equality of representation, we were told emphatically you cannot go with a variance of higher or lower than 10. However, this set of further draft recommendations actually takes us to -14% and -12. So when we start looking at those aspects of equality of representation and providing for effective and convenient local government, I would then question how we're supposed to achieve that when we've gone beyond what the Boundary Commission was originally dictating. I would say emphatically that that variance of plus or minus 10 was not to happen. And I would also say that as a district council, we also had very recently a community governance review that also proved opportunity for members, and certainly from the wards which they were representing, and also as a district-wide capacity that we had opportunity to feed into. So on that basis, I certainly wouldn't be able to support it, certainly representing my particular ward and knowing some of the information that has gone through previously. And equally, I would urge everyone to go in and access both the draft recommendations and the further, and look at some of the detail that's in there without going division by division and into the detail of each of the numbers on those. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Benyon.
Yes. Yes, boundary reviews are never perfect. They're always difficult. And I can remember when a draft split Harleston in half, a village of 250 people. But in the end, common sense prevailed. But I'm largely of the view of Councillor Robertson that the revised proposals are more coherent, particularly in terms of not pushing chunks of the urban areas into the rural wards, the rural divisions. And but I think it's actually better in terms of Lichfield Rural East than he suggests, because the current Rural East has the issue of Tamworth, which he alluded to. Part of the division is south of Tamworth, and most of the division is north of Tamworth. So the current situation is you do have to drive through Tamworth to get between the 2 bits of the division. They are actually, if you can actually take a detour around, stay in the division all the way, but it's quite a detour. So overall, I know that it splits Alderness with Fradley, but Alderness has is quite an important centre for the people. For a lot of the villages in Rural East, they use the doctors in Alderness. Not all of them. Some of them use doctors in Tamworth, but it is very much particularly for Eddingale. It's very much their centre where they use services. So I think it is actually more coherent. It may well arithmetically not be as good, but it is more coherent.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to speak? So shall we? The motion has been proposed and seconded. Can we vote on that then? So all those in favour of the motion as yeah, I think because yeah, that works. Yeah, because and all those against. All those against that motion? Oh, there's nobody against. Sorry? Abstentions? Fair enough. Yeah, yeah, it's very shocking. So that's 16 or 17, yeah. So it was 21 for Councillor Salter and myself, but 21 and abstentions. Yeah, I suppose, yeah, I guess that's 16 or 17 abstentions. Right, I think we're, well, except for those of us who are councillors for Lichfield City Wards with the last item. Question, yeah, no, I haven't forgotten the questions. So we've got several questions. Yeah, I've got one, okay. They've all been replied to by email, and I think you should have them with you. And the first one, and people have the right to answer to ask one supplementary. And the first one is question from Councillor Ashton to Councillor Smith, I guess Councillor A. Smith. Councillor Ashton, do you want to ask a supplementary?
Yes, I have a supplementary. I'm very pleased to see the action by Severn Trent, particularly as it actually was decided to be started before I'd even asked my question. So I obviously have some kind of superpower over Severn Trent, which is very nice to know. Also, I think that Captain Smith will be very pleased to be sailing the Titanic through cleaner waters.
Yeah, no,
But
Captain Smith, not
my
Councillor.
question is,
Yeah.
can we please ask Severn Trent to carry out some kind of programme of diagnostic and preventative maintenance? Because this is going to happen again with the sewage system. And so if we can instruct Severn Trent to stop this before it happens again, please. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Ashton, for the question. I think it was a very valid question, actually. Not the first time Captain Smith's been in a sticky situation, but he survived it again, this time at least. No, I think in terms of this particular issue, I've been reassured now that Severn Trent have finally got to the bottom of the problem, which is in the sewer pipe that runs beneath the Remembrance Garden. So work is now happening on that again. In terms of the general thing, I will take the general Severn Trent, I'll take that back. But in terms of specific problem, I've been assured that they've now found the blockage. Yeah.
Thank you. Question 2 was from Councillor Evans to Councillor Cox. Councillor Evans, do you have a supplementary question?
Well, Chair, I only received these really quite late, and I actually wasn't at home at the time, so I haven't been able to absorb it all that well. But I raised it because at the last council meeting, Councillor Cox did say he was going to review the committee. So I hope that is reflected in his answer, and I hope that's what he's doing.
Okay, thank you. So there's no supplementary, I don't think so. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. The next one is from Councillor Henshaw to the Leader of the Council, Councillor Pullen, on the digital electoral polling decision. So do you have a supplementary, Councillor Henshaw?
Yes, Chair, my supplementary is what provision is there if this electronic system breaks down on an election day?
All right. Councillor Pullen.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Henshaw. I will respond to you in writing on that, Councillor Henshaw. It may not surprise you that I don't have that specific detail to my fingertips this evening, but I will write to you with a full answer in terms of what backup provisions there are for it. I'm sure their officers will have investigated that at length and will have a ready response for you very, very quickly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Question 4 is from Councillor Whitehouse to me as the Chair of the Council. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, Chair, I do. Yes, thank you. Chair, I'm very grateful that you, along with Councillors Ennis and Councillor Evans, attended the opening of some of the facilities. And it's obviously good that you welcome this investment by the Conservative administration. Will you therefore distance yourself from comments made by your colleagues in the Labour group last year when it was said that this investment showed that the council had in fact got the wrong priorities?
The answer is no. I think I'm trying to think what I've been to at the opening of. I'm not going to argue about specifics. I know that paddle tennis, for example, is coming before the planning committee, and I'm not necessarily able from the chair to comment on specific proposals, but I do generally, of course, welcome public investment. But you're not going to get me to, what's the word? Specific agreement or other agreement with my colleagues. So I'm sorry, that won't be a satisfactory answer. But then the next one, question 5 from Councillor Powell to me as chair of the council. And as mayor, go on, but I have chair of the council. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I have, Chair, and thank you for your previous answer you've given. So just to clarify, can you confirm that for every event you've attended as mayor instead of the chair, can you have you extended the invite to Councillor Holland to attend as the vice chair, ensuring that the Lichfield District Council does not go understated? Thank you.
I think I can certainly say that he came to Pancake Day. I think we all, well, the slightly bizarre thing, which probably makes your point, is that I have today, as chair, been invited to the mayor's cocktail party. And everybody else is very welcome to Councillor Holland, and I hope, and his partner, his wife. We're hoping, the civic officer and I are very much hoping that Councillor Holland will be able to attend. Thank you very much. Right. Question 6 perhaps is almost as important, from Councillor Ball to Councillor. Oh, it's Councillor Farrell, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think Councillor will answer because Councillor Farrell is on important business in London today. The reason I asked this question is the reason I mentioned earlier about making sure that things get done. And I'd like to ask whether Councillor Pullen knows why it took until the 25th of January for that letter to go. It was only 2 paragraphs, and the council meeting was on the 12th of December. And I wonder whether the letter would have gone at all had I not emailed Councillor Farrell and some senior officers about it on the 12th of January to ask whether it had gone or not. So it's a concern that we make decisions here at this council and we don't follow them through. On the second point, Councillor Farrell has sidestepped the question. I asked what was being done to further the motion, which was about looking at our current way of assessing affordable housing and seeing how it can be improved. The response talks about a future way of doing it. I think we need to look at what we can do now rather than waiting for 2 or 3 years to try and sort it out. So Councillor Pullen may not be able to answer either of those, and he may ask to Councillor Farrell to come back to me at some later point.
Councillor Pullen.
I'd agree that I'm going to ask Councillor Farrell to get back to you on that second point. I think, yeah, in terms of sending the letter, yeah, clearly it's over the Christmas period in the middle, but yeah, we should be able to send letters a lot more quickly. Equally, we'd quite welcome responses for our MPs a lot more quickly as well, or at all in that fact.
Thank you. Question 7 is from Councillor Robertson to Councillor Sylvester Hall. Do you have a supplementary?
Thank you, Chair. Unsurprisingly, yes, I do. Originally, I started writing an answer to this saying I'd like to thank the Cabinet member for her answer, but I don't actually think what she's written actually answers the question, which for reference was, can you explain what effect the changes to car parking fees have had on the economy of Lichfield City Centre? Now, I do know why that question hasn't been answered, because in preparation for this question, I did ask officers about the following pieces of information for this year and comparative years last year and in 2019. I asked about the number of short and long stay tickets sold, so we can figure out the number of people visiting the city. I asked about the income raised for the council in those time periods. I asked about the number of PCNs in those periods, so we can see if people are parking more often without tickets. I asked about the average length of tickets bought, so we can figure out what's happening with the dwell time. However, yet again, with this cabinet member and significant changes that she's made to the city centre and the lives and livelihoods of people who work there, that data isn't available. So my supplementary is, in your answer, you've committed to closely monitor and review the changes. But if you're not accessing that data, and if that data isn't readily available, so it isn't being monitored, how are you going to make sure that monitoring happens?
Yeah, couple of points that I'd respond with in the initial part. So the first part of your actual question gave more of a statement, which was replied to with a significant amount of detail about how much communications were done between myself and opposition, shadows between yourself and between the Liberal Democrat group as well. And there was a fair amount of detail that I think that is worthwhile just revisiting before you actually got to your question, which was about the impact on the economy, which is an absolutely valid point. And I think that everybody who wants this district to be successful, and certainly as far as the city centre and the wider economy, wants to make sure that information is available. Some of that is being put together into a dashboard that's being compiled at the moment, and that's a work in progress. And we certainly have some information on that, which could be shared. And at the same time, details that we need to establish as to how we're actually arriving at some of that information in the first place. Specifically on the car parking, we've got a study that's going up to the 3rd of March. And then when that wider information comes out, then that also can be shared. At the same time, I would also add at this point that the amount of tickets that are being issued as far as car parking has increased substantially, but we'd certainly like to be able to quantify that. And certainly the element which is for the free 30-minute parking, which I think has been taken up very well across residents and visitors that are coming in. And also to be able to point out the fact that when it comes to the car parking side, it is still the case that long stay has been reduced across the piece, and that it is £4. Certainly for when we start looking at where we can park for any extended period of time. As well as working together as members, we are also working with the local chambers of commerce as well. And I think that's equally important. Just being able to establish how many car parking tickets have been issued, as in sold. We also need to be able to have some quantifiable information as to the impact on our local community as far as the economy on that also. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, final question was from Councillor Norman to Councillor Pullen. Are you completely satisfied with the answer? You've got a supplementary.
No, to be honest, yeah, I was hoping for a satisfactory answer, and I wouldn't have to ask a supplementary, but it's not quite what I expected. But just to say, the carer Al from Lichfield won the micro business category, and they've already put their award on their website. Hayworth Contracts from Burntwood won the small business award, but haven't put the award on their website yet. But doesn't he think that if there was, we are sponsoring it, it's good for business, it's good for the council, they'll be able to do some follow-up publicity on this. That's all I'm asking for. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, it's all right. Yeah.
I'm just seeing if anyone needs to declare an interest first, Chair, that's all, or if I'm all right to continue.
Right, sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine. Absolutely. I can give a really vague answer to this or a very specific answer. I don't know which one you want, but
Specific.
Well, specifically, I think it was deemed inappropriate for a Labour councillor to approach our comms team directly to ask for a social media post about their business winning an award. There is no policy about not doing publicity or not. There was, as in my original answer, we work very closely with the chamber to promote all businesses right across the district. We'll do that on a frequent basis. On one particular occasion, because of the nature of the inquiry, and as there was no planned press about it, it was deemed inappropriate to continue.
Okay, on that note, we can. I don't
It's a point of
Go
order.
on, the point of order, yeah.
And I will declare an interest, obviously, because it's to do with my husband. But can I just point that that councillor who did approach ComTeams didn't actually name their company at all when he sent in about it. And also another company in Burntwood, Crowns Highway, won an award, and they weren't recognised for winning an award either.
Okay, thank you. Right, I think we'll call the meeting. Do you know the time? Okay, 20:44, hell, 16 minutes before, lights out. So thank you all very much for your patience and your contributions. Meeting